Good evening, everyone. This is your 1-minute warning. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our December 2nd council meeting. I will begin with an Indigenous territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinootan people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. We are thankful to the First Nations people who care for these territories and those across the province. In this territory, Indigenous people continue to endure inequity, violence, and oppression due to colonialism. To fulfill the City of Waterloo's vision of being strong, sustainable, and together, we must stand in allyship with Indigenous peoples. Allyship is a process and earned through actions. As beneficiaries of this land, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and understand both the history and the current experiences of First Nations, and to be aware of the oppressions they continue to face. Next, we'll have a moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think of the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. And there are also a couple of international days to recognize. So tomorrow is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and this is a day for celebration and reflection. In our own community, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the Grand River Accessibility Committee, also known as GRAC. Members of GRAC have enriched our community by identifying and overseeing the removal of barriers for people with disabilities in Waterloo and across the region. Our commitment to inclusion benefits all of us, whether we are disabled or temporarily able-bodied. Beyond GRAC, disabled people continue to advocate and educate. A lot has been accomplished, but we know there is still so much more to do. Today, we reflect on the impact of ableism and many barriers that continue to keep disabled people from participating fully at work, school, play, and in civic life. Today, we recommit ourselves to the long-term work of creating an inclusive and accessible community where everyone can participate, contribute, belong, and thrive. And on Friday, December 6th, is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Today, on Friday, we will remember the 14 women who were killed at L'École Polytechnique in Montreal 36 years ago, and all of those who have lost their lives since then to gender-based violence. This solemn anniversary is a time to reflect on the harmful effects of patriarchy that put women, girls, two-spirit, and gender-diverse people at disproportionate risk of violence simply because of their gender. We are reminded that other aspects of identity further increase this risk. The crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, two-spirit, and gender-diverse people have made this clear, as do increased incidents of violence against young women, trans people, and women with disabilities. As a city, we recommit ourselves to stopping gender-based violence in all its forms and to creating communities that are safe for women, girls, two-spirit, trans, and gender-diverse people. Council will ask if anyone has a disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, look for a mover and a seconder of the to approve the minutes of November 4th, 2024 council meeting, moved by Councillor Roach, seconded by Councillor Freeman. All in favor? That is carried. So we start tonight with a delegation by Ruth Castleman. Welcome, Ruth. Ruth is the Chief Executive Officer at the Accelerator Center. And the Accelerator Center obviously is a key partner in our community. And I think you may be the first female CEO, which is, you know, in light of what I was the day of recognition, pretty apropos. So welcome, Ruth. We look forward to your presentation.
All right, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. I didn't know I had to dress the back of me as well, but I thank you for your time, everyone. I appreciate you allowing me to come and speak. My goal tonight is just to share a little bit about the work that the Accelerator Center is doing and an update on where we're at. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Ruth Castleman. I'm the recent CEO of the Accelerator Center. I was previously a tech founder in town, grew a business, sold a business, and after being on the board of the Accelerator Center for 6 years, I stepped in as their CEO. Just because I love the work that the Accelerator Center is doing. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So just for anyone who isn't familiar with what we do, basically what we try to do at the Accelerator Center is bring together all of the different aspects required to help early stage tech companies grow into sustainable companies. So this includes early access to funding, it includes coaching and mentoring, industry expertise, and then also supports like copywriting, bookkeeping, marketing tools, really anything that somebody needs to have to get a business off the ground. So we work with about 150 early stage tech companies at any point, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our current clients and some of our alumni in a couple of minutes. So this is a stat that we're very, very proud of. Accelerator Center startups have an 85% 5-year survival rate. And to put that in context, other companies who receive some sort of support from an accelerator or an incubator have a 59% survival rate, and someone who does not have support from an accelerator has about 44% survival rate. So an 85% 5-year survival rate is an amazing stat, and everyone who's contributed to supporting companies in the city of Waterloo should be very, very proud of that. Some of our other stats, and I'm not going to talk about stats for too long, but we've supported over 1,000 startups in our 20-year history. We've raised almost $2 billion in investment for early stage startups, and we've created 6,000 jobs. And so I think our impact from an economic development perspective hopefully speaks for itself. You may recognize some of the logos on these screens. These are only a few of our alumni that have come out of the Accelerator Center, but you should recognize companies like Myovision, Applyboard, Axonify, Magnet Forensics just recently had, I think, a $600 million exit. Maybe it's a lot. It's a big number. Simwave, Darwin AI was, I think, the first company in the region bought by Google. So these are all amazing companies that have contributed significantly to our region. I'm just going to talk very quickly about our programs and what we do. We have 2 key tracks of programs. One is called our Incubate program. This is a program that most of our companies are in for approximately 2 years. It can start right from, I have an idea and I'm thinking about creating something, right through to scaling internationally to multiple countries, multiple products, and with a team of 50 people. So we support them all the way along that path. Mostly in the areas of things like finance, marketing, operations, HR, really all the core things that you need to run your business. And then we also bring in experts for specific tasks, like if someone has, say, supply chain needs or clean tech or AI or something that's specialized to their company, we'll bring in experts to support them with that as well. The other stream of programming that we have is called our Accelerate programs. So these are more distinct start to finish, usually sort of 6 months to a year long programs with a set goal in mind. So I'm going to highlight just two of those. One is our AC Aerospace program. This was a joint program with the AC, the region of Waterloo International Airport, and the University of Waterloo. And the goal of this was to bring in early stage companies that had some sort of existing technology that could support the region of Waterloo International Airport. So whether that was something to do with more efficient customer service bookings or baggage handling or something to do with the actual airplanes. We had 10 companies come in, receive support from a number of different industry experts, and we're actually hosting our showcase on Wednesday at the Accelerator Center for anyone who wants to learn more about our aerospace programming. But the goal of this program specifically was to connect early stage companies with the airport so that they could conduct early stage trials or pilots with the airport, which is not an opportunity that most early stage tech companies would get. So it's a fantastic opportunity both for the Waterloo Region International Airport to get access to some technology they might not have seen, but also for early stage companies to get right embedded into a significant partner. The last one of our Accelerate companies programs that I wanted to highlight is called AC Studio. This was a program that we launched 3 years ago. We're just coming up to the end of it now. We brought in 100 companies on one single day, which for our second phase of this program, we learned that 100 companies on one single day is too many companies. But it was an amazing program that went from 100 companies whittled down to 50, now whittled down to 25. And the goal of it was to see, with funding provided to them at each stage, how quickly we could accelerate their time to market and the growth of their business. And so we have proven that that actually works amazingly well. I may have one more slide on this, or I might not. Well, I don't. So, and so we're just ending our third year of our 3-year studio program with 25 companies, 2 of which I'm going to highlight in just a moment. But this program made sure that all of these companies had access to mentorship, industry experts, and also specifically funding as well to help grow their businesses. Just a couple of stats out of our first AC Studio program. I think you can see those. At least the numbers are big. The words are a little small, but we're very proud of these stats. So 29% of all of the 100 companies had a clean tech focus, so some sort of clean tech or sustainability focus. 26% of those are working on a med tech or health tech solution. 63% of those are women-led companies. If you look at the industry norms for a tech incubator, you'd be looking probably 15%. So 63% is an amazing accomplishment. We had 5% Indigenous-led companies, 26% newcomer-led companies, and 57% of those were youth under 40. Okay, I'm going to just highlight 2 clients that I probably love a little bit too much. This first one is Infinite. You'll see their headquarters are on Frobisher Drive in Waterloo. So thinking about anyone who has kids, juice boxes, or uses a Tetra Pak, or something like a chip bag, you may know that none of those things are recyclable. And the reason for that is because the inside layer of all of that packaging is actually a layer of metal. You can't recycle them. Infinite, which they came from the nanotech program at the University of Waterloo, they have created a barrier that goes inside packaging that allows the product to keep the food fresh, but also still be recyclable. And this is a company that's grown amazingly in the last couple of years, and based right here in Waterloo. They already have amazing partnerships with huge companies like Pepsi, Unilever, Mitsubishi, and they're only going to be much more successful going forward. So keep an eye out for these folks. They are literally changing how packaging is done in the world. The other one, this is a super fun company. If anybody knows, Arion Labs was another successful company in the Waterloo region. They flew drones. That's what they did. And the founders of Arion Labs went on, after selling their company, to basically, instead of flying drones, they now fly boats. And so this is an electric boat that is being built right on Parkside Drive in Waterloo. It allows basically, as I said, instead of putting the boat through the water, it rises above the water and it's basically flying. Therefore, they can use batteries. There's zero emissions. It stops damage to shores, so there's a huge environmental impact for these products. And again, being built sort of down the road from here. So,
Sorry to interrupt, Ruth.
Sure.
You actually just have about 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I think I'm done, actually. Here, this is my last slide. Thank you. I'm just inviting everybody to come to the Accelerator Center to come and see more of what we do. Our goal with the AC is to continue the great work of building tech companies here in the city and to align with the goals of the city of Waterloo. And we hope that you'll come and learn more about us, and we'd like to learn more about you. That's the end.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That's really fascinating information, and it's. You know, I feel like I've been mayor for 2 years, but it's constantly, like, feels like every day I'm kind of surprised and amazed by the capacity of people in Waterloo and the organizations here and the things that are being done and built and in the tech sector and in other sectors. So it's really a good reminder, and glad that you're here tonight to share these success stories with us. And I will be at the Wednesday Aerospace Connector event. I look forward to that. But Council, some questions for Ruth. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Ruth. I will just echo what the Mayor said, and really it's just incredible to see what is happening here in Waterloo in terms of the tech sector and what contributions that brings to our city, and also that you're in Ward 6. So, you know,
yes,
that's the most important thing. My question is about women in tech, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about your experience with the women in tech and what that looks like at the Accelerator Center, and if you've had any opportunities to expand that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great question. We seem to be following a theme, and I'm good with that. I've been living that theme for my whole life. So a lot of work happens at the Accelerator Center to ensure we are attracting diverse founders. And what that means is making sure that our language is gender neutral, which sounds like a simple thing, but it's not always a simple thing. But a lot of what we do is also looking for early stage companies in places that maybe not everybody else looks for them. And so those sorts of efforts have led to things like us having 63 of our 100 companies were women-led, and that was not intentional. We didn't pick them because they were women-led, we picked them because they were amazing companies. And so I think it goes to show that the women-led companies are out there. Sometimes we might have to look in different places than we would traditionally look. And actually, just as a very interesting subset of data to that is whittling down to our 25 top companies, 14 of those are women-led. And again, they were not selected because they were women, they're selected because of the potential of the organizations. The second half of your question, what was the second half of your question?
Just based on our conversation, just what have you done at the Accelerator Center then perhaps to even bring women together?
Yes, we do have an amazing program starting next year, which next year is only in a few weeks from now, that will be supporting women entrepreneurs in a very special and specific way. But you have to wait for the announcement coming in January.
Fair enough, thank you. And I think too, I'm just curious if there's any way the city can support you. Like, are there any gaps for you, or is there anything that the city could help, progress in specific areas?
Well, one of the things that we are, from a gap perspective, that we're always looking to fill is introduction to industry. So early stage companies can have great ideas, but chances are if they send an email or a phone call to an established industry partner, they may not get a response just because of all of the companies that are trying to get their attention. But if there are opportunities in all of your spaces where you're working with companies who are looking for technology solutions, where they don't necessarily know what the solution is to their technical problem, we have access to about 20 organizations like ours across Canada. And if we represent 150, there's probably, I actually don't know, but probably 5,000 early stage startup companies, and we can we can mine that group to find solutions to technical problems. So if you do come across industry partners that are either open to new technology opportunities, or maybe are looking to solve a problem that they don't know how to solve, we would be happy to try to we actually call it AC Match. It's a dating service without anything yucky. It's corporate and startup matching without the awkward conversation. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
So you've solved dating as well as...
No, we did not.
Councillor Wright. Thanks, Councillor Roth. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I was just have to commend you on that and the organization on the 5-year retention rate. That is really stunning. It is such a hard thing to get a company off the ground, and to have that kind of support is really brilliant. Building on Mary Lou's comments, I just want to ask about, you know, with such a diverse group of startups, working across everything from, you know, manufacturing to supply chain to AI, what are you hearing from them in terms of the kinds of things that they might need in the community, whether that's computing power or more access to labs, or are there any sort of bits and pieces of the infrastructure landscape that they're talking about?
Yeah, that is a great question. And we do work with tech companies across all aspects of technology. So yes, that is a very broad group. The access to industry connections is definitely a big gap. Early stage funding is always a big gap. Anyone who works in the tech space always hears that more access to, whether it's grants or venture capital, angel funding, all of that is a big gap in the region. Everything that, not in the region, sorry, in the entire industry. Anything that the City of Waterloo is doing for talent retention, you know, attracting doctors, like all the things. All of us are small business owners and employers, so all of the things that all small business owners need, we need those as well. So having a wonderful full place to live with housing and doctors and schools or parks, those are all the things that we need as well. And we do actually, I appreciate all the work that goes into allowing us to do the work that we do by setting up the infrastructure that the City of Waterloo sets up for us.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up? No? Okay. Question that I had for you was just around, they were really great stats, and congratulations on those, but one of the ones that jumped out, or a couple that jumped out at me, were the clean tech focus and the med tech, because we know we are going to get a new hospital in the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully closer to 5 than 10. But I also just was curious if you were aware that the city has what we call Generation Park, which is a light industrial park, employment park that we are in the process now of starting to build out and sell parcels of land. And the goals, or the previous council set some high sustainability standards for the type of companies that will go there and the building itself. So the type of companies that you're talking about here, I didn't know how aware you were of Generation Park, because we want to keep as many of these companies that you are working with in Waterloo as long as possible, and while they scale up and start up and grow and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you were aware of Generation Park. If you weren't, Kristen Sainsbury or Justin
I was going to say, I think Justin actually shared that with us maybe 6 months ago. I saw him earlier. No, sorry, there he is.
Sorry, I didn't realize Justin was here.
And I think it's an amazing thing for the city. I would love for us to stay in contact about which companies we have that are up and coming that might be looking for space at the time. It's all of our goal to, you know, we're sort of the push them out of the nest sort of organization. So we grow them up to a certain stage, and then really it's time for them to move in to get their own office. And if there's facilities that are specifically targeted to what they care about and what they do, then that's a great reason for them to stay here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, thanks very much,
All right,
Ruth, for
thank
your
you.
presentation and for the work that you do on behalf of the tech companies and others in the community. We'll see you on Wednesday. Okay, so moving on to item 8, staff reports. There's a staff report on 2025 University Avenue East, declaration of lands as surplus. This is I believe there's a delegate who wanted to speak to this, Mark Seasons. Sorry. Welcome, Mark. We'll have you speak. Oh, okay, you run the planning school at the University of Waterloo. I did not realize that. Welcome then, Dr., I guess, Professor Mark Seasons.
Well, thanks very much. Thank you very much. I am a resident too, so it's okay. Good evening, Mayor McCabe and council members and all our staff colleagues who are here this evening. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak about the proposed declaration of surplus lands at 2025 University Avenue East. And I want to say at the outset that, I do have high regard for my colleagues at the city and for the quality of leadership exhibited by this council. So much hard work and creative work goes into these proposals by staff and committees and so forth. So congratulations for getting to this point. It's not easy. I speak as a resident of Waterloo, as a registered professional planner, and from a vantage point as a professor and director of the School of Planning at Waterloo. And many of our graduates are in the room this evening, actually, so it's nice to see that. I'm really familiar with the many challenges concerning affordability of life in general in our cities, but especially in the housing realm. And meeting the increasing demand for affordable and attainable housing supply is what we might call a wicked, multifaceted problem in cities across this country, not just Waterloo or Kitchener, this region, everywhere across the country. It is a crisis. It's also hands-on deck time, and that very much includes governments at all levels, federal, provincial, and local governments and agencies. The crucial thing in this whole challenge, I think, is to secure the land, and the rest tends to fall into place once you have the land under control. And that's why it's so encouraging to see this motion on the table this evening to dispose of these surplus lands. The freeing up of surplus public lands for a worthy purpose, such as affordable and attainable housing, can generate so many benefits and few costs to the community. I can think of no downsides to a decision like this, and so many upsides, tangible and intangible. My opinion is that the city is poised to make a really meaningful and impactful contribution to solve this problem by declaring this property surplus. And once that decision is made, then this remarkable project, and I have seen the material on that, it is really something else. It's of national scale, actually. This is a big, big project of which you should be proud, and the proponents should be proud. This remarkable project can then proceed. I think this is a legacy project. It's something about which we can all be proud now and in the future in this city. It would demonstrate the leadership, innovation, and smart planning that is so characteristic of the city of Waterloo. So just to wrap up, I think it's the right thing to do at the right time. It's time for a bold move. I congratulate the city for considering this motion and this recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those very astute and kind comments. And yeah, we are the beneficiary of many of your graduates from UW's planning school. So thank you for training them and to the extent that you do, to the quality that you do.
Not single-handedly.
I was going to say you have 2 more minutes left on the clock if you want to keep telling us how great.
I'll just read it backwards now, and they'll fill a bit of time here.
Just joking. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Seasons? No. Well, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
We
your time.
appreciate, it is important to hear from community groups, especially someone who knows the planning process as well as you do. Just, it validates the work that we're doing here and the proposal that we've put forward. So
Thanks so
really,
much for your thoughts.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay, so with that, then we will move on to, sorry, we need to vote on this, pardon me. So there is a recommendation on the floor, 2 recommendations to declare this land, 2025 University Avenue East surplus. I need a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So now that moves us to something that's very exciting, and we've been looking forward to and anticipating for a few months now, is the report on 2025 University Avenue East, the request for expression of interest process and recommendations. And we have We have one of our UW planners with us tonight, Michelle Lee, who has a presentation for us about this. But just before you start, Michelle, I'm going to use my chair's prerogative to make a few comments about this because this decision and this report and this process that we've been going through, I think is really just, personally I feel like, but I think for our council, it's one of the biggest decisions certainly that we'll make in this term. And it's been done, the work has been done very thoughtfully, it's been done with purpose, it's been done with transparency, and I think it's community building at its best. We know that managing publicly owned land is a really important responsibility, and one that council and staff take very, very seriously. But because it's publicly owned land, council also has a responsibility to be fully transparent with our decisions and our discussions regarding this process. And we know that there's been much, much work and numerous discussions that have taken place over the past year regarding this. And again, it's a sizable property. It's approximately 14 soccer fields. It is currently zoned employment, and it's been zoned employment for over 25 years, and we know that employment land is important. But we also know, I just want to remind people that approximately 2 years ago, there was a consultant that reviewed our employment lands, and staff concluded that this parcel at 2025 University Avenue could serve as a way to help address our city's affordable housing needs. So, and that's partly because employers are moving closer to the center of our city, and many people now work remotely, and we know that we need light industrial and commercial spaces and other office setups. So we know that that's still important, but we know that affordable, supportive, cooperative housing is important as well. So building community is a balance, and the city works really hard to respond to and to address a variety of pressing needs. And today, housing and access to supportive, deeply affordable, attainable housing is one of the most pressing challenges our entire community faces. And addressing this was certainly one of my top campaign commitments, as well as others on council. And as the previous delegate, Ruth Castleman, just said, business owners, hospitals, schools, nonprofits, post-secondary institutions, and other sectors, everyone needs a safe place to call home and a place to live. And this is a key part of attracting people and bringing them to Waterloo and keeping them in Waterloo. And we know that we have to meet the provincial government's 16,000 new housing units, the target that they set. And the decision that we will make today will be instrumental in ensuring that we reach that goal. And we also know that housing is not just bricks and mortars. This is about opportunities for families, individuals, seniors, and youth of all socioeconomic backgrounds. It's about fostering thriving, sustainable communities and neighborhoods. And it's, again, about making sure everyone has a safe place to call home. And I'm really proud that Waterloo is doing its part to meet our shared goal of building more homes faster. And so just a brief recap, the decision we made starting April 27th to embark on this process was a big decision. We made another big decision on May 27th after we consulted with the community and an MZO was requested. That was a big decision. And again, the decision we make tonight, whether to tender this process or not, is again a very big decision. And again, I think it's probably one of the biggest of our term. So I see this as an opportunity for the city to take a 25-acre parcel of municipally owned land and transform it into a new community that Waterloo residents need. It's close to parks, it's close to walking trails, active transportation, a GRT express route, the new East Side Library, and more. And the decision that we'll make, all the decisions we make, but this one particularly tonight is significant for families, first-time home buyers, seniors, First Nations individuals, newcomers, and for people who live in our community as a whole. And there's no challenge too big that we cannot solve it by working together, and that includes housing. The scope, scale, and size of this decision and the development itself is unprecedented in Waterloo and in Waterloo region. So with that, Michelle, I'll turn it over to you, and in advance, thank you for the very hard work you've done on this, and council, we look forward to your questions and the subsequent discussion.
Thanks, Mayor, and I feel like maybe I don't need to say anything more. Can I just sit down? But no, thanks for that introduction, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I am very excited to present an update on our request for expressions of interest process. The Mayor just summarized quite a bit of the work that was done to get us to this point, and I'm going to do a little bit of my presentation as well, kind of reviewing some of these key milestones. The purpose of this presentation is also to provide a little bit of background information on the preferred proponent and proposal. We can't go into as much depth as we'd like to because we have limited time, but I'm going to try and highlight some of the key features of the proposal. And I do know that the preferred proponent, some of the representatives are in the audience as well, and so if there are technical questions that perhaps I can't answer, it's possible that they might be able to answer. So going to our timeline of where we came from and where we're at, back in May, Council directed staff to proceed with a request to the province for a minister's zoning order. And as the Mayor mentioned, that would enable us to use what was originally zoned employment lands to be able to use those lands for a mixed-use residential development. And the land specifically that we're talking about is 2025 University Avenue East. In June, we submitted the request to the province for an MZO, and while we waited for their response, we worked on a request for expression of interest. That request was submitted or released, I guess, to the community in August, and in September, end of September, we received 4 proposals. 3 proposals were meeting our basic requirements, and so we established a review team of staff members, including a regional staff member, to review those proposals and bring forward a recommended or preferred proponent. So that's where we are at now. This report, the purpose of this report is to describe the proposal that the proponent brought forward and to talk about what the possible next steps could be if council decides to select that proponent as the preferred proponent to negotiate with. We're hoping to initiate negotiations for a purchase and sale agreement to be concluded by end of January 2025 so that we can move forward quickly with the process of site plan review and ultimately get to the point by the end of 2025 where the proponent is in a position where they can get a building permit for a minimum of 50 units. And that milestone is in accordance with our Housing Accelerator Fund requirements of 50 units by the end of 2025 in terms of a building permit. The MZO request also has sort of a parallel process that I'll just review quickly. So in June, as I mentioned, we submitted our request. In August, the province released that request on what they call the ERO, which is a public website for public consultation of provincial matters. It was posted for 30 days. And following that posting, we worked with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and an Indigenous community to work out some concerns that were raised regarding some of the environmental features on the site, and there was a desire to see some confirmation by the city that we were going to be conserving those features and protecting them from development. We went back to the drawing board and made some revisions to the MZO proposal that saw some more lines on the map that distinguished where these environmental features would be conserved, as well as some buffers. And we submitted that revised MZO request to the province on November 25th. And in the meantime, we reviewed the request for expressions of interest over the course of the fall, and just in terms of some of the key requirements, we were looking for a not-for-profit or consortium led by not-for-profits. We were looking for a proposal where 30% of the housing units were affordable rental units and that they would remain affordable for at least 60 years. We wanted to see that the remaining units, either rental or ownership units, were affordable or attainable, or a combination of both. And we defined attainable fairly flexibly as lower end of market. The concept being that we wanted to see the whole community benefit from this development, not just maybe the 30% of affordable rental units, but rather that the whole development could meet the needs of households that are struggling to find appropriate housing in the market today. The proponent had to work within the proposed MZO framework, meaning that they couldn't come back to the city with minor variance requests or a zone change, because that was going to disrupt our timelines and our process. We asked for proponents to demonstrate that their proposals were sustainable, complete, compact, and would develop a mixed-use community. And finally, we asked proponents to demonstrate that the project would meet the half timelines and demonstrate that they had the capacity to do that. So now on to the preferred proponent. Our review committee identified Habitat for Humanity Waterloo Region and Build Now Waterloo Region as the consortium that we'd like to see bring forward a project. Habitat has proposed to oversee the project and be responsible for it, while Build Now, which is also a not-for-profit organization, would carry out the coordination and construction part of the development. Build Now would sell to Habitat the development parcels that have the constructed buildings on them, who would then subsequently sell those units to either qualified partner families or to community housing providers, some of which are listed on the right-hand side of the screen. Habitat and Build Now would be working with community partners. I understand that they had been working already to develop the proposal, but that would continue to work with those community partners to enable them to own, co-own, or lease buildings depending on the organization's needs. So 4 community partners were identified as committing to owning a building on the property. These include Union Cooperative, Central Ontario Cooperative Housing Federation, KW Urban Native Wigwam, and Supportive Housing of Waterloo. A number of other organizations identified an interest in other types of arrangements like head leases. These include, but aren't limited to, Reception House, Extend a Family, Thresholds, and YWCA. This is a high-level concept drawing showing what the development could look like. You can see where the revisions to the MZO are in pink. Generally, the proponent submitted a concept that aligned already with the changes to the MZO, but they didn't have the luxury of knowing all of the boundaries. And so you can see that even though largely the development occurs outside of these boundaries, there are a few buildings that fall within the boundaries, and the proponent has recognized this and will be working to, if approved by council, will be working to revise the concept plan to match the areas that are intended to be conserved for natural heritage purposes. So 23 residential and mixed-use buildings are proposed for the site, ranging from 3 to 9 stories. In total, there's a proposal for 1,010 residential units. A large amount of commercial and amenity space are proposed, with the possibility of some of that area being dedicated to a daycare, and a large amount of outdoor space is also proposed, like outdoor amenity space such as patios, plazas, gardens, and parks. In accordance with our requirements, with the request for expression of interest, 30% of the units, actually slightly more than 30% of the units were proposed to be affordable rental, and these are at or below 80% of the average market rent. The proposal brought forward rents that are actually below average market, or 80% of average market rent. All units were intended to remain affordable in perpetuity via the long-term ownership and operation by the not-for-profit and cooperative rental housing partners. There are other options that we can consider through our negotiation to further secure that longevity of affordability, but just by nature of the owners of the buildings having the mandate of providing affordable housing, we feel is a nice compatibility in terms of mission. 30% or approximately 30% of the units are proposed to be affordable ownership units. These are units that are priced at approximately $390,000 a unit. They're the smaller units, the one bedrooms. And approximately 40% of the units are proposed to be attainable ownership. These are ownership units that are priced at something in and around $490,000 and lower for 2 to 4 bedroom units. All ownership units are intended to remain affordable and attainable in perpetuity through a variety of tools under the Land Titles Act, including an option agreement and a Section 118 title restriction. So just in conclusion, this proposal and this development couldn't be possible without the city's contribution, but also the federal government's contribution and the province considering approval of an MZO. So it really is an all government development, and I think that's important to recognize. In terms of the city's contribution, the lands are proposed to be provided to the proponent at no cost, or very, very nominal cost. The value of those lands is estimated to be about $20 million, and we're proposing to use $5 million of the Housing Accelerator Fund funding to help reimburse the outstanding balance that we owe on those lands. The development, because it is proposed to be developed by a not-for-profit organization, it would be exempt from development charges, CBCs, and parkland in accordance with the DC Act. And we do have some additional half funding that we could contribute to help ensure that this development can proceed as planned. The funding could be used to offset things like school board development charges, which are not exempt, other development-related fees like building permit fees and site plan application fees, and things like servicing, local roads, underground services, and what we anticipate will be required, signalization of University and Millennium Boulevard intersection. So that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions. And as I mentioned, there are members of Habitat and Build Now in the audience if there are any questions for them as well.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Really appreciate that. Council, we will ask if anyone has any questions around anything that Michelle's presented. Go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Coming on there. Thank you. Through you, Mayor McCabe, I want to echo Michelle, all of the excellent work that you've done and the amount of time that you've put into this, and the really tight timelines, and having to herd everybody together that you reference, the federal government, the provincial government, all of the not-for-profits in the development community here on this. It's been like exceptional work on your end, so thank you so much for that. I have a couple of questions. You touched on this, but I'm hoping that maybe you can expand on it a little bit. In the operational model summary in the report, it notes that all of the land assets are going to be held by Habitat for Humanity, which is great. And it also highlights how they will utilize their expertise to ensure that the units remain affordable in perpetuity. You touched on some of this, the option agreements, title restrictions, covenants, etc. And I was hoping that you could confirm for me that we are not only talking about this 62% that are designated as affordable, but also the 38% that are highlighted as attainable as well too, are intended to be held in perpetuity.
Through the mayor to Councillor Bodley, yes, all the ownership units are proposed to remain attainable or affordable in perpetuity through those tools that you mentioned, and then the rental units were proposed to remain affordable based on their ownership. But as I mentioned, we could explore other options as well to provide some backup should something happen to an organization, and if we need to feel that comfort that we have a backup plan.
Right, and through you, Mayor, that sort of leads into my next question. I think I joked about this previously. Perpetuity is a long time. But as we look towards the next step is the land disposition. I'm wondering if you can highlight for us what tools that the city might be considering to ensure that decades from now, obviously we all trust the intent of what everyone has come together here to put this forward today, but how do we ensure that decades from now the city is still meeting the intent of this land disposition? So looking at first right of refusals or option agreements on our end to ensure that if something were to happen, that we have the ability to potentially to ensure that these remain affordable, attainable for in perpetuity.
Through the mayor to Councillor Bodley, there are actually quite a few tools because we own the land. The first tool is the purchase and sale agreement, which will set out the expectations and the process that the land will be developed and the performance metrics. But probably the strongest tools we have to address that affordability piece are those tools that Habitat has been using for a number of many decades, and these are the option agreement and the Section 118 title agreement, or not title agreement, but restriction. And these are, they allow the city to be, if we desire to be, the second in line for an option agreement to repurchase the lands should the owner not meet the expectations that are set out in that agreement. So the proposal would be that Habitat would be the primary organization listed on that option agreement, but the city could opt to be a second organization listed in the case that that was necessary. There are other tools that we have as well. I don't want to profess to be an expert in them, but I know that through the submission and some of the conversations that have happened with our legal staff, the conditions through condo registration can also be used to help implement the option agreement and the title restrictions. And they can also lay out the framework and ensure that the future buyers know what they're getting into and can be held accountable should they fail to uphold their end of the bargain.
Right, that's great. I'm really happy that we're thinking about all this, and I look forward to sort of seeing how this progresses down the path. But one final question, if I may, through you, Mayor, is how do we ensure? Again, this is not meant to slight anybody's intentions as we're moving forward with this project, but what will we be looking for or seeking as part of this agreement in terms of assurances that this proponent actually builds this project in a reasonably timely manner? And perhaps maybe you can speak to what a timely manner means to you, and maybe there's a difference between what we think a timely manner is and what the proponent thinks is a timely manner. But overall, sort of, what is the intent here on our end to ensure that this project actually gets shovels in the ground and actually gets built?
Through the mayor. So if council does decide to direct staff to proceed with negotiations, we would be negotiating with the proponent and identifying exactly what those outcomes would be as part of the purchase and sale agreement. We know that getting from a concept plan to building permit stage for such a large development is very challenging. It's a very, very tight time frame. And so the first milestone would be getting a building permit for a minimum of 50 units in accordance with our half requirement. And we want to make sure we hit that milestone to secure the funding that we are anticipating getting from the federal government. Subsequent to that, though, we have 950 or so units left over to build. And it is staff's intent to try to see those units being constructed in a timely fashion. We haven't identified a particular deadline for those units, but we know in the proposal that was submitted, plus in conversations, that there is a mutual desire to bring forward this development as soon as possible. And so that would be, those exact timelines, I think, would have to be negotiated. So unfortunately, I can't really give you an exact deadline, but I can tell you that there is a desire to push that speed as absolutely quickly as possible, because we know we need the housing as soon as possible, and also we know we need to meet our housing targets, and this is one of the best ways to do that, since the market is really challenged right now.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Other questions from council? Oh, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. It's just such a massively impressive project. So kudos to everyone who's been involved in getting it to this point. I just am a little bit curious about, on the attainable ownership end of it, I'm assuming that it's meant to be owner-occupied, but what are the sorts of mechanisms that would be in place to ensure that?
Through the mayor, I wonder, would it be all right if I asked Philip Mills to come up from Habitat? He has much more extensive knowledge on the eligibility requirements that they use through Habitat, and he can speak probably a little bit more personally about their experience with this tool, and then maybe I can fill in the gaps after.
Thanks, Michelle. Welcome. Assuming the clerk gives the thumbs up. Yes. Yes. Go ahead, Phil.
Sure. So when it comes to kind of eligibility type stuff, we're talking about how we ensure those sort of things and how we ensure owner occupation or any of those sort of things, that's all done through that option agreement, as well as our condo docs. So initially when a development like this is organized and built, the condo documents outline owner occupied as a requirement. So if somebody is not complying, condos have opportunities to act. There are a number of things within our option agreements that are called trigger events. So if you're not doing this, if you're not complying in all the ways you're supposed to, we then have an opportunity to act. And one of those things is not being owner occupied. So the intent of this is owner occupied, certain income thresholds, all that kind of stuff that we really want for the attainable things, built right into that option agreement. That option agreement is intended, and our design is that goes along the way. So every time it's sold, a new option agreement with a new family that understands exactly the terms. So this is something that isn't a one-time thing, but perpetually available to people that we're trying to get this to. But that's how we make sure that this is for the right sort of the people we're intending, and that they're using in the way that it was intended, because we are using not just municipal realities and municipal assets. These are often donated, and we're charities. Like, we have a lot of reasons to make sure that we make that this stuff stays with the intent that it was both fundraised and organized for.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Did you have a follow-up to that? No? Okay. Councillor Vasek. Oh, sorry, Michelle, did you have anything you want? Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Vasek.
Thanks, through you, Mayor. Yes, of course, thank you. And thanks to the Mayor for your leadership on this. You really took this on. And it would not have gotten to this place without you, so. My question is about, well, I know that it's the federal government that has a duty to consult with Indigenous nations and communities about various land-related matters, and we don't necessarily have a legal obligation. I do think that it's been important to this council and the previous council and staff to build relationships with Indigenous nations and communities. And so I'm curious if you could elaborate on some of what you talked about in the report about how you've consulted with Indigenous nations on this and what's come out of those conversations.
Through the mayor to Councillor Vasek. Yes, we did some initial consultation at the very front end of the project. I would say that there was some concern initially from one Indigenous group that felt, MZOs didn't have a great track record up until that point, and there was some concern for sure, and there was a desire to see what came from the environmental impact study that was going to be underway shortly. And so what we did is we worked towards a staged approach for the environmental impact study to make sure that that information could be incorporated as soon as possible into any requests to the province for an MZO. In addition to that, we met with Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing staff and an Indigenous community to talk about the results of the environmental impact study and what could be done to ensure that natural features that were of interest to that community could be conserved. So that was sort of the engagement piece. And then coming out of that, obviously we revised the MZO. It happily also reflects our own official plan policies. So it was, it was something that conforms with our official plan, also something that was of desire by an Indigenous community. So we could provide more certainty by making sure that those lines were actually explicitly included on the map that was provided to the province. In addition to that, though, we did identify a number of other areas of interest that we will be working with the proponent to build into the project, one of which was a desire to see some restoration work for any buffers that needed to be restored. Should there be restoration work needed, that an Indigenous landscape firm that uses Indigenous species, not Indigenous, like now I'm talking about naturally Indigenous for plant species that are maybe supportive for local wildlife, could be planted in those areas that were identified as being needing restoration. We identified that there was a need for a second phase of the environmental impact study that would look at a possible natural corridor that connects the wetland at the south end of the property to an adjacent significant woodland that the city now is moving towards potentially purchasing. And that natural corridor would allow for better flow of species, wildlife species. So yeah, a number of factors like that we're really hoping will make for an overall better project, as well as a project that's reflective of Indigenous concerns. And I should just mention one last thing, that we were really happy to see that the proponent brought forward, it wasn't actually a requirement of the proposal, but they brought forward a proposal that did identify one of the buildings as being owned and operated by an Indigenous housing operator. And so that fit very nicely in with the overall objectives that we had for the site.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. Well, this development, as you know, is in my ward, and it's a large tract of land, and it's going to be a real changing landscape around Rim Park and the whole neighborhood there. So it is very exciting, and the renderings are beautiful, and I'm hopeful that it will get constructed as it's envisioned. Just kind of building on Councillor Vasik's question, did you get feedback on the MZO from the new documents that were put in? Do we have a sense of when the MZO might be issued?
Through the mayor to Councillor Freeman, we know that the ministry staff were waiting for our revisions and quite keen to receive them so that they could then finalize the review and pass them on to the minister for what we hope is approval. They know that we are targeting end of year for a response from the minister. We don't get to require adherence to that deadline, but we are very hopeful that they will give us a decision within this calendar year.
And just to follow up on the natural heritage study, so is the additional work already been procured? Is it already started, or does it have to wait for a seasonality?
Through the mayor, yes, the additional work will commence. We've got a tentative agreement with the phase one consultant that did the phase one work. It makes a lot of sense to proceed with them for the phase two. And the work won't actually start until the spring because of that field work component that's needed, but also because the development needs to be more finely tuned so that they can proceed with looking at the specifics of where the buildings are located and how they're to be constructed and the impact on the adjacent natural features. So that work will start ramping up in the spring.
And I guess my last question is that there's certainly a lot of interest more broadly from the community, but certainly in the neighborhoods that will be welcoming the new citizens to Ward 4. Will there be more opportunities to see designs and renderings and all of those things?
Through the mayor to Councillor Freeman, yes, as soon as we have direction, or assuming that we get direction to proceed, we will be using the Engage page as the site where we will be posting information once it's available about what the development could look like. And, once we're getting farther into the details, we'll be able to have more information to share.
And just to follow up on that, I know that citizens are really keen to better understand the transportation network and systems and how that might look, and any upgrades to the intersections that might happen. As you can imagine, transportation tends to be a core of the onion here in Waterloo, and people like to know how their personal journeys will be facilitated.
Through the mayor, yes, that is definitely a component of the broader project, and we can absolutely make sure that there's information that corresponds to any spillover works that are related to the development, but maybe outside of the property. We'll be sharing information about that too, so everybody can keep abreast of the issues.
Yeah, that's really great. I would like to move the motion when it's appropriate to do so.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Freeman. Just looking to see if there's any other questions from council. Just a couple of quick ones from me. The goal of getting 50 housing units, getting to building permit ready by the end of 2025, is it possible that we could set that a little higher, like 100 or 150? Is that attainable?
To you, Mayor, I think we'll have to work with our partners to negotiate something. I really couldn't say what's possible, what's not possible at this stage, but I can take that and move forward with that, desire through our negotiation process. I think that it is fairly evident that the city really, really wants to move forward quickly, and we will do the best we can to bring as many units forward as quickly as possible. Perhaps 50 is the starting point. We'll talk about if we can bring forward more than that.
Okay, thank you very much. But the more is better. The higher number, the better, for all kinds of reasons, including obviously the people who will eventually live in there. And I'm just curious about. It's kind of a particular thing. The school board development charges. Could you explain why we would consider offsetting those development charges? Oh, that's a Mr. Witzel question. Okay, give Michelle a break.
Through you, Mayor, to yourself, the school board DCs are actually covered through a separate legislation, so they're not actually exempted through the DC Act where the city and region school boards are. So the school board development charges are just one of the potential examples that we're putting forward is some of the costs that we could help the proponents cover as part of their overall development. So we will be working with them to kind of see how the remaining half funds are best utilized in accordance with their project. We may be better served using it something like servicing costs, things that come like earlier on in the development. But it's just one of the examples of the ways we can kind of help flow the remaining half funds to the proponent to help lower the overall cost of the project.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that explanation. That's all the questions I have, and just making sure everyone else is okay. Then that's great. And I know we have a delegate who wanted to speak to this issue as well. And so I'd ask Brian Paul, the Executive Director of Supportive Housing of Waterloo. Welcome, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor McCabe, members of council, and city staff. My name, as Mayor McCabe said, is Brian Paul, and I'm the Executive Director for Supportive Housing in Waterloo, also known as SHOW. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight in support of the Habitat for Humanity Build Now Waterloo Region project. At SHOW, we understand firsthand the critical need for safe, affordable housing in our community, particularly for those facing significant barriers. The work Build Now are undertaking will not only address this need, but also complement our shared mission of supporting our most vulnerable neighbors. This initiative represents an extraordinary opportunity to improve housing access for seniors, a demographic that is growing in size and need. At SHOW, we have seen how aging residents face unique challenges, including mobility issues, physical health challenges, fixed incomes, and often social isolation. The inclusion of senior-friendly housing for low-income older adults in this project aligns directly with our vision of creating supportive communities where everyone is given a chance to thrive. As mentioned earlier, a crisis is unfolding for seniors in Waterloo Region. Older adults are the fastest growing demographic in the shelter system, and for many of them, they are experiencing homelessness for the very first time in their life. Out of the last 5 residents SHOW has housed over the age of 60, 3 of them have never experienced homelessness before. To quote one resident, he said to me, "I never thought this would happen to me." Incomes typically decline over time as one ages, connected to changes like retirement, reduced work hours, medical issues, or the death of a spouse. Due to these factors, the number of cost-burdened older adults, so those households who pay more than 30% of their income towards housing, is at an all-time high. 50% of single adults experiencing homelessness are over the age of 50, and that's up from 11% in the early 1990s. With that said, I continue to be amazed by the resilience and positive attitude that so many of our residents have when they're facing just really dire and horrific conditions before they actually come to SHOW. SHOW offers these individuals not just a home, but an environment where they can feel a sense of belonging, inclusion, community, and ultimately a family. All of this comes with supports and programs to help them achieve their independence and help ensure that they thrive, they plan, and they have hope, something many of them have lost many years ago. Now, I understand that addressing housing concerns often raises questions from the surrounding neighborhood. I want to emphasize that seniors-focused housing brings stability and positive engagement to communities. Seniors are active participants in fostering a safe, welcoming environment and contributing significantly to the vibrancy of the area. By providing this type of housing to this particular demographic, I hope the neighbors who have concerns will be reassured that this project will bring benefits to the community while addressing critical gaps in the housing system. Supporting this motion will have a profound impact on SHOW and the individuals we serve. Each step forward in creating affordable housing alleviates the pressure on systems such as healthcare and social services. More housing means fewer people in crisis, reduced reliance on emergency services, and a stronger foundation for individuals to rebuild their lives. We believe that this initiative embodies the principles of compassion, collaboration, and forward thinking that define this community. SHOW fully supports the motion before you tonight and urges Council to approve this vital project. This decision will ripple through the community, offering hope and dignity to those who need it the most. We are confident that it will make Waterloo a stronger, more inclusive place for all of us. Thank you for your time and for your continued leadership on taking on the housing challenges for all those who are vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Really appreciate those words and that support. Does council have any questions for Brian? Yes, Councillor Freeman.
It's not really a question, but I did want to thank you for pointing out the fact that as a council, we are doing the very best we can to find land, undertake zoning, be forward-thinking in terms of building housing, because a lot of times individuals routinely email us and say we're never doing enough, and so and there'll never be enough, like as much as we wish we could. So I just want to say thanks for pointing that out, because we're getting pretty accustomed to being told we really don't do anything well.
You're welcome. You know, I tell people all the time, we are incredibly lucky to have our 3 buildings be in the city of Waterloo. We are and have felt supported for so long, and a special thanks to Dorothy and her advocacy for our residents at SHOW. So no, we feel very lucky, and we will advocate on your behalf any chance we get.
Thank you very much, Brian. Particularly in your comments, you said the word hope a number of times, and I think that, personally, that really resonates for me, that's what the work that you and your staff and volunteers do and what you bring to, people who need it, who are some of the most vulnerable in our community. So thank you for coming in tonight. Thank you for the work you do, and we look forward to continuing to work with you with the project at 144 Herb Street as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I know there was someone who was going to speak from Union Co-op, but they're not here, is that correct? Did you have a change list? No, they're not, okay. Okay. Oh, I thought you were giving me an updated delegate list, okay. Okay, thank you so much. Thanks again, Michelle. It felt like we kind of just did an abrupt cut there, but thank you again for the work that you've done here. And I think it is important to recognize that we wouldn't be able to do this, of course, without the money that the $22 million. This is a big part of it that we received from the federal government, not even a year ago. So it's a great deal of work that's been done in 11 months. But the half funding really is what's enabling us to bring this forward. So certainly want to give kudos to that on that front as well. Okay, so council, we have 4 recommendations in front of us attached to 2025 University Avenue East. Councillor Freeman has already indicated that she would move it. Councillor Wright will second that. And now my favorite time of the night is all in favor. That is carried unanimously. Thank you so much, Council. Again, I just really believe that the size, scale, and scope of this is unprecedented, and this is a tremendous step forward for our city and for people who live here and people who want to live here. So thank you so much, Michelle, and everyone involved in the team. And we'll look forward to hearing back from the next steps with Build Now and Habitat for Humanity, and moving this project forward. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Okay, now the rest seems a little anticlimactic. Just joking. Just joking. We're all very excited about the official plan review as well that's happening. And I see our clerk has stepped away, so I'll just pause for a minute. Okay, we will resume our agenda, as we have some other important and interesting items to pursue for the rest of the evening here, including our official plan amendment 58 and official plan review, phase 1. And we have, sorry, I've got this is a formal public meeting to address item 9A, official plan amendment 58, official plan review, phase 1. Any persons who want further notice of this application, including the passage of any bylaw, should sign the appropriate register in the binder located on the back at the rear of the council chambers. Will the clerk please advise council of the method used to give notice of the meeting and the dates notice was given?
Notice was advertised in the Waterloo Region Record on November 7th, 2024, and emailed on November 8th, 2024, to public agencies, to all persons who signed in or spoke at the statutory public meeting held on September 23rd, 2024, and to all persons who requested further notice.
Thank you. Our planner, Rick Martins, welcome Rick, will now give a brief overview of the application.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. Council, I'm pleased to bring to you tonight Official Plan 58, which is the official plan review, phase 1, for the City of Waterloo. We've been undertaking a review of our official plan, a statutory review, and so I'm happy to bring forward the proposed amendments and provide an overview of what's included in that plan. So I've been here before to introduce the plan as it's going forward. To remind everyone that we're taking a statutory review. We're required under the Planning Act to review our official plan every few years. So it's been 10 years since the plan was first approved. So this is the first review of that plan. So that's what's before you tonight. It's important to remember the three kind of themes that we're focusing in on as part of the official plan review. In the staff report, we've outlined some of the key issues that were raised early on in the review process, and from that and through community consultation, we identified three particular themes that kind of provide an overview of the official plan review. So we're looking to streamline the policies to make it more efficient and easy to use. We're looking at policies that can enable more housing. As we've heard tonight, it's an important need in the community, so we're trying to enable more housing, and also to create complete communities. So making sure that we have all the elements that are required to make sure that the municipality and the city grows in the way that is outlined in the plan. So as far as the process goes, we were here earlier in June to provide a first draft of the official plan. And from there, we did some additional consultation with the community and industry to solicit feedback on the proposed policies. We came back in September for a statutory open house to hear more feedback on the plan. There was also lots of consultation throughout the summer in various means. We also had an open house in September as well. So to kind of remind everyone, we broke the review of the official plan in two different phases. It's important to highlight that component. The official plan is a very large document. It's a high-level document, oversees growth for the next 25 years. And given the scope of the review, staff identified an opportunity to break up the review into different phases. Initially, this was done because that is a similar process that the Region of Waterloo undertook for their official plan review, and so we were following suit to make sure that we were in conformity. But in addition to that process, breaking up into phases allows an opportunity to bring the most critical elements forward, most timely elements forward now, and elements that require a bit more review and a bit more consultation, we can review as part of the secondary phase. Another key component to remember for the different phases is the city was awarded housing accelerator funding almost a year ago this month. And there are 5 different initiatives that are somewhat tied to the official plan. So it's important that we bring forward components of the official plan that will enable some of those initiatives to move forward as part of that agreement. So that is one of the reasons that we're bringing forward the recommended changes as part of phase 1 now before the end of the year. So some of the key components, we took a light touch, just doing a general overview and updates to chapter 1 and 2 of the official plan. A bit more detailed overview of Chapter 3, which is our urban forms section. That's probably the chapter that received the most review and update as per the direction that was outlined in the terms of reference earlier on. Land use designations was another area where there was a bit of update. So we didn't change the framework so much, but making sure that we are updating language and enabling the policies that reflect the priorities of the plan. And then similarly, there are more housekeeping amendments and updates throughout the plan. We changed the name of the site-specific policy section to area-specific policy areas. We updated the implementation section as required to make sure that the policies are in place as per the Planning Act. We reviewed and consulted with many different groups throughout the summer, both industry and the community and the public, and we got great feedback and updated the plan accordingly as based on what we've heard. One of the things that we did here was some more work should be done for reviewing height and density policies in the official plan. So we are recommending that we take a closer look and continue to work on this aspect as part of phase 2 going forward. I'll get into that in a bit more in a second. So some of the highlights in our official plan, some of these you'll have seen previously. We're updating our growth targets to the year 2051 in our plan. We've updated our height requirements, our limits in major transit station areas from 25 to 30 stories. We haven't changed any other heights other than the low-rise areas. Those are changed to 4 stories, and that's again enabling part of the 1.5 initiatives going forward. But we'll likely take a more detailed review to review heights further in the next phase. Updated urban design policies was a component of the plan. We've added a new minor neighborhood corridor to try to enable missing middle housing in the plan, as well as updates to the land use policies, including the residential section designation, commercial designations, employment designation, and institutional policies. So a little bit of detail there as well. We've added a new stationary mixed-use designation. Again, this is falling out of one of our housing accelerator components. There's a lot of background to that piece, but through the regional official plan, there was a municipal comprehensive review looking at employment lands. One of the recommendations coming out of that is to open up some key areas within station areas, and try to enable more mixed-use development in those areas. So that's the rationale for that new designation. And as I mentioned, we updated the implementation section accordingly going forward. So since June, we've had additional updates and refinements to the plan, lots of small wording updates to the plan. We took a further look at the urban design policies and streamlined those and updated the wording in those components as well. In October 2024, a new provincial planning system came into force in effect. So we had the opportunity to update the policies to make sure that we're consistent with the new PPS 2024. There's no longer a growth plan, or the old provincial plan policy statement was wrapped into the new PPS. We've updated, again, some of the Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives, so wrapping those up and making sure that those are in place for implementation. They're continuing throughout that process, as well as updating the employment framework. And again, that's coming out of directly from the updates to the new PPS 2024. So you'll notice in the revised package that there's quite a few sites that have been recommended to be deferred. So we've received a lot of feedback throughout the late summer and fall for some site-specific properties. Recognizing that we are looking at a very high-level plan, we have policies that applies to the citywide. There's over 32,000 properties in the city of Waterloo. There's bound to be some site-specific considerations going forward. So because of the timelines in part associated with the HAF funding, and because we want to bring forward the phase 1 so we can move forward to the next phasing, we elected to recommend to defer several properties to take a further look at some of these. We don't want to hold up the whole plan while we take a look at some of these site-specific provisions. So the intent with those deferrals is to bring back a mini package to council to review early in 2025. And that's added as a new recommendation in the updated plan, recommendation 5. So before you tonight, we have 5 recommendations that we approve the plan that ultimately, phase one will be reviewed and that we move on to reviewing phase two with some of the key considerations that require additional consultation with the community, such as the height policies, which we didn't have a chance to engage fully with at the community level. So that we like to take the opportunity to broaden the scope of that consultation throughout the community. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate that. So council, do you have questions for staff? Start with Councillor Bassett.
Thanks through you, Mayor McCabe. Thanks so much, Rick and others, for your hard work on this. It's a big job. My first question is about beds per hectare. And it looks like in this official plan revision that there's a move away from beds per hectare. And so I'm curious if this is the case, and if so, what's bringing about that move away?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Vasic. Early on in the process of official plan review, looking at different issues that would need to be addressed, one of the issues that came up was how we measure density in the city. It's quite a unique measure, the way we do it in Waterloo with beds per hectare. It's not a common measure. So there was some incentive to review that to make sure that it's still fulfilling our needs. It was brought in through the last official plan in 2012. So we committed to reviewing to see if it was a worthwhile measure going forward. So that's kind of how it started. One of the key changes that we've done through the official plan is to actually remove density measures in the official plan and leave that to zoning. Going back to the broader principles of trying to streamline the plan, trying to take out measurement items that shouldn't be in the plan that should be in zoning. That was one of the areas that was identified. So in the official plan, for the most part, there's a few site-specific areas. For the most part, we've removed density measured in the official plan, leave it to zoning. As far as the measure goes, there'll be an implementing zoning bylaw that needs to be updated as well to conform to the policies. And at that time, we'll take continue the review and likely determine if beds per hectare still makes sense at the zoning level or if there is a better measure that we can use going forward. So we've kind of enabled that change and then we'll be follow through the zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And in the few locations where it still exists, can you just discuss how you're going to be looking at those, or how who is going to be looking at those, and what the plan is?
Yes, so through the Mayor to the Councillor, as I mentioned, we've taken out through the parent policies throughout the plan. It does still remain in some of the ASPs, the area-specific policies, formerly the site-specific policies. We didn't do a detailed review of each site-specific policy. That will be left to the further phases, but likely we'll go through each ASP area and remove or change the measure going forward so it's consistent throughout the plan. So that'll be part of the next phase.
Super, great, thanks. And I have one more set of questions maybe. So I'm keen to see the change in the commercial, possible commercial in, or limited commercial in low rise. So thank you for making those changes. And I was expecting to see it, hoping to see it as of right in the OP, but I understand that would happen in the implementing zoning bylaw, which is fine. So I'm just hoping you can explain that process of what it will look like from including limited commercial uses and convenience retail uses as regulated by the zoning bylaw, and then what council can expect to see moving from this change in the OP to how it will show up in the implementing bylaw, when it will show up in the implementing bylaw, and how we might be able to get updates about that on council to make sure that we see the progress happening.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Vasic. Yes, we heard early in June to look at adding limited or commercial uses into the low-rise residential area. So the way we've enacted to do that is to enable it as a complementary use in low-rise residential areas. So the official plan enables the policy and it can be implemented through zoning. The reason it's done that way is it still allows some implementation control for the city to see how it gets rolled out. And so we can refine exactly where that is applied and in different situations to make sure that it's applied appropriately. And so that'll be updated as part of the zoning bylaw update that will follow the official plan review. So typically, and for a lot of these considerations, we're looking to what the official plan can enable, but the implementation details are best left to the zoning, and that's the process that we've recommended for commercial uses in residential areas.
Super. And is there a way for us to expedite getting that into the implementing zoning bylaw? What could a timeline look like for working on the implementing zoning bylaw, specifically this piece of it? And what barriers might there be to expediting it? And how can council get an update, and when can council get an update on how that progress is going?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, I think we're all anxious to move these pieces forward. There are a lot of moving parts to the official plan, and there are not restrictions, but barriers to getting staff time to work on different priorities. There's a lot of priorities available right now. We'd also want to focus on phase 2 to make sure that the plan continues to move forward, to bring that forward. But one of the recommendations tonight is to direct staff to start working on the zoning bylaw. So I would say sooner rather than later. I can't offer exact timelines now, but should the report be approved tonight, we would likely bring back some updated timeline and a sense for council in the new year of how that might be rolled out, the zoning.
Okay, super. And is that a place where you can include the progress that you're making on the, I'm just very keen to hear back at some point in the future in 2025 how the progress is going. And so are you saying that early 2025 is a good time to report back to us on that? Or mid-year?
For a timeline, not actual bring back the recommendations, to clarify that.
Oh, sorry, I totally blanked when you...
To bring back a timeline for when that might happen, not necessarily the actual changes.
Okay.
In 25, yeah.
Okay.
To clarify.
Super, thank you.
Did you want to add anything, Adam?
Yeah, certainly. So it is recommendation number 4 there that council would be directing staff to initiate the zoning bylaw amendment, really to implement this official plan amendment that's before council today. We certainly hear you, councillor, around this particular piece and wanting to get that moving. We, as staff, we also want to get that moving, as well as other elements. Mr. Martin spoke to, there's resource constraints, and we're working quite diligently on OLT files and Housing Accelerator Fund files as well. But yeah, it'd be our intent in the next first half of next year to bring something forward. Really a bit of a status update and kind of a roadmap of what that implementing zoning would look like.
Great, thanks to the both of you. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you very much. Other questions from council? Sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you. Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. So it's noted that, and you referenced it a couple of times here, that as part of phase 2, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but beyond looking at some of these ASPs, that we are also considering increasing the heights beyond the 30 stories in certain MTSAs. And I'm maybe hoping that you might be able to expand a little bit upon what that process might look like as we go into phase 2, what factors we are going to be considering as staff provide a recommendation to council therein.
Through the mayor to Councillor Bodley. Yes, so as part of the first phase right now, staff have recommended increasing the heights in certain nodes and MTSAs from 25 stories to 30 stories. Some of the feedback we received throughout the summer and fall was that the city should review all corridors and nodes further, and also consider additional height in some of these areas. So we've initiated a review of heights. We've looking at some of the different criteria, some of the rationale, where it might make sense. But staff wasn't in a position to bring that forward tonight as part of the phase 1 review. So we committed to continue that review. We've also hadn't had a chance to engage with the community on this issue particularly. So we've put forward to the public the height to increase to 30 stories, but we haven't signaled anything additional to that. So it wouldn't be appropriate to bring forward a change now. So in the new year, we'll continue that review. We will engage much more community consultation and then be able to take all that information and report back to council if there's a new recommendation that's warranted as part of the next phase. So there's technical aspects and then there's community consultation aspects, both of which we will help inform any recommendations if necessary.
Okay, that's great. And another question, if I may, Mayor, excuse me, through you. Back when this was brought to council, I had made some comments about defining what neighborhood character means in the OP. And I actually noted that for the most part, character in the OP has now changed to something like function or features or compatibility or built form, which I think is more appropriate in terms of what we're referencing when we reference character. But I did separately highlight to you a couple of areas where I still noted that older vernacular noted. And so I just wanted to publicly signal that I'm hoping that maybe we might be able to look at those and determine either whether or not character is the appropriate verbiage that we're looking for in those areas. And if so, defining it so that we understand exactly what that means within the OP, setting aside the plethora of ASPs where it is also referenced, because I obviously understand we're not going to reopen every single one of those. So I just wanted to leave that with you and also say thank you for looking into that, and it was definitely noted on my end, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Other questions from council? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Rick. I've learned a lot through this OP review, and it's been really excellent. I just have a couple of questions. I'm looking at the intensification within nodes and corridors in major transit station areas. And I think one of our conversations tonight and the passing of the Affordable Housing 2025 is really positive. But what I'm considering here is the loss of affordable housing stock along the rapid transit routes and the intensified lands. So I mean, it's a tension, right, between the need to intensify, but also then losing stock. So I'm just wondering, is there any consideration for the loss of affordable housing stock and displacement? I'm thinking of Sunnydale along Albert and close to the Ion. So is there any way that the city can consider that in these areas that are major, transit station areas?
Through the mayor to Councillor Rowe. Yeah, so the policy that you're referring to is an existing policy in the plan, and we have updated it somewhat. We've combined the major transit station areas and the nodes and corridors. I will note that policy in particular that you're referring to, intensification of nodes and MTSAs, it does encourage intensification, and so the intent with that policy is to, if we have an underutilized property, for example, to make it more transit supportive. There's always different considerations, however, going forward, and so we recognize, and the plan recognizes, that not every area is necessarily going to change, and there's other factors. There's heritage factors sometimes, or affordable housing factors. So, so I will note that it's not a black and white consideration, but I will take that away with the team for phase 2 to see if there's opportunities to. We have some policies that update affordable housing provisions, and we've heard a lot more feedback, so I think that's something we can take away and see if there's additional opportunities as part of phase 2.
That's great, thank you so much. And I have one more question, and I was looking at the comments at the end of the report, and one of the comments from staff was that a consultant retained to review height and density policies was active now. And so I'm wondering how that might impact the established densities in the OP at this time, and if they are subject to change, or sort of what the consultant is, what you're considering for the second phase.
Through the mayor to the Councillor Rowe. As far as densities go, again, we've removed them from the large part, height, okay, height. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still using the old language.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just on the density piece, what we will look at is how we measure, and that's in zoning. As far as height goes, as I mentioned earlier, we are doing a bit more work It's not ready for consultation yet. We'd like to do that in 2025, but we would like to look at different areas. So right now we focus primarily on the major transit station areas for height. I think there's an opportunity to either confirm or review some of our nodes and corridors to make sure that the heights are appropriate for the area. And it's not to say that there'll be a blanket application. So it's too early to tell where we may go with that, but I can say that we do want to review our nodes and corridors fulsomely and look at the heights to make sure that they are appropriate across the city.
Thank you. And so with that review, is that something that would be coming, if not to council, to the ward councillor, so that we're aware of what areas may be considered for a change?
To the mayor, to the council, certainly, and that's one of the reasons we have delayed bringing anything forward, because we want to consult more widely. So we would bring that to council and to councillors individually. Absolutely.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So I'm so excited that it's partly the Housing Accelerator Fund that is driving some of this work. It's it's wonderful that we have this opportunity to get into the housekeeping of this massive document and have a chance to really consider where the refinements might come and where we can sharpen our strategy and leave the rest to the zoning. So I think overall it's a very positive development. I just have a couple of questions. So one of them being around the retail clusters. And so in a couple of places I noted that there's 3 main ones that have been identified. And I'm just wondering whether, being the champion for Uptown, whether Uptown is really being considered as the core of the city in this OP.
Through the mayor to the councillor. Yes, as part of the review, one of the key things we undertook was a commercial employment policy review that was received by council in 2022, and we took those recommendations forward to, that's one of the areas that we revamped more so than some of the other parts of the OP. We consolidated some of our commercial policies so that we don't have so many wide designations, and so we identified different commercial areas, core areas, one of them being, of course, the Uptown, the other being the Boardwalk area and the Conestoga Mall area. Those are the 3 large commercial areas, and so they're definitely identified through the policies. I will note for the Uptown, in addition to being identified as one of the primary commercial nodes in the city, we do have separate policies for Uptown, recognizing that it's an enhanced role not only as a commercial center, but as a cultural center, area for civic clustering going forward. So there's, that has remained in the plan. We've updated that accordingly, but commercial component has remained a priority for the Uptown. We've consolidated 2 of those designations and tried to make it more open so that there's more opportunity for retail and commercial uses in addition to residential, because we note that Uptown is really one of our complete community areas where we can access different area uses readily available. So that's all been strengthened and promoted in the updated plan, I would say.
Thank you for that. And considering that our institutional partners are also reflected in this OP review process, I'm just wondering what you heard from them in relation to their master planning, their own master planning process, and what they were specifically looking for.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, we have engaged with all the institutions in the city. In particular, one institution was more prominent in providing a more direct feedback on some of the wording, so we've tried to work with them to the extent possible. We've updated a lot of the site-specific components, brought them into the academic designation going forward. We have updated some of the policy wording as well. It's fairly flexible, I would say, in our academic institutions. We look to be partners with them, but there's no requirement to do so. So we continue to work to try to have partnerships and collaboration with them, but there's nothing that's prescriptive in those policies that say you must do this. We do outline what the city's priorities are, if there are master planning, to make sure that you review infrastructure, for example, to consult with the community if possible. But again, that's not a requirement. So that's largely carried over from the existing plan with some refinements. So I would say it's promotion without being prescriptive.
Okay, thank you for that. And I just have one last question, which you know, across a couple of areas of the document, you know, we talk about protecting natural features. In some areas, we talk about low impact development. But one thing really struck me, and that is that we don't ever refer to how these elements are protecting us. And this, I think, is a really critical part that we might consider as a bridging element to phase 2, when we do get into discussion about environment. I just noted that things like natural infrastructure or green infrastructure are missing from our glossary. They're not really there in the land use maps. And it could be something that we could consider in this next phase, just because of how important they are at this point. And as we're building a climate resilient city, we need to respect how nature actually does protect us. So it's just sort of a comment and just something I noticed in the language.
Through the mayor to the councillor, somewhat of more of a comment, I believe, but yes, the next phase, infrastructure and utilities in particular, are identified as considerations. So one of the issues about splitting up is I know there's a lot of things that we want to get to, and so we recognize that, but I'll definitely take that away. I think there'll be a priority for reviewing the infrastructure component, and later down the road when we do the environmental piece as well. So we will try to bridge those pieces that we don't have, recognizing that not everything's identified in the glossary if it's not directly related to the phase 1 components, but that's certainly something we can take away as a priority to focus in on and report back.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Thank you, Rick. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. Actually, this was a question, Rick, that I asked you, but I'm going to change it a little bit, and based on what Councillor Wright was saying about the environment, I'm specifically looking, I'm going to tie this together with my question about the consultant and looking at other areas for intensification. And I had asked about the Hazel Albert commercial that's adjacent to Sugarbush, and I will always advocate for Sugarbush and the health and well-being of Sugarbush. So if that area is considered, this isn't necessarily a question, if that area is being considered by the consultant for intensification, I'm wondering about considering the woodlot and how that can be taken into consideration for any potential look, like any change, and if that could be like a top priority, the well-being and the canopy of that woodlot.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, I mentioned earlier about some of the criteria and different components and not necessarily being a blanket application if there are any changes, and that would be one of the considerations. So adjacent to different environmental features, for example, you know, the capacity of the area, if there's a high groundwater, these are all components that will be considered in the review. So we'll try to be as fulsome as possible and report back on those kind of considerations. But infrastructure, natural features will certainly be priority for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions? Just one from me, Rick, and I may have missed it, but I was pleased to see that some information in there, or proposal around having some commercial in neighborhoods across the city, some commercial like retail. But then I was confused when it had that like convenience retail uses would be on the ground floor of a multi-story mixed-use building. Is there a particular reason why? Like if we were to add retail into different neighborhoods, there would have to be a multi-story unit instead of just, you know, a one-story or a standalone?
To you, Mayor. So one of the things we reviewed is looking at expanding commercial opportunities in different neighborhood areas. There's that component about being ancillary, being part of the mixed-use building. That's an existing provision that's in there today. In addition to that, we've added convenience commercial as a complementary use. So it can also, it can be an either or. So you can have it as part of a mixed use building, or it can be a standalone use in some of those neighborhood areas. So we've maintained what was already in there in the plan today. So if you have like a house and you want, or a building and you want to have some residential above and you have commercial on the ground floor, that's fine, that can continue. But we've also added a new provision where you can have just a standalone convenience commercial, as its own use in the neighborhood areas.
Okay, great, thanks very much, I'm glad to see that then. And so is Councillor Bassick. Okay, if there's no other questions, from council, then we'll say thanks, Rick, and we'll move on to we've got a number of delegates tonight, and the first one is Melissa Durrell, spokesperson for Build Urban. Welcome, Melissa. We know you're very familiar with this, with the horseshoe in the council chambers. So over to you. You have 10 minutes.
Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. What time is it? Mayor McCabe, members of council and city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of Build Urban, an advocacy group representing urban developers who are deeply invested in shaping the future of Waterloo Region. Applauding for the last thing that passed. Our members are not just developers, they're community builders. We share a commitment to working with our municipal partners to building housing and create communities that are vibrant, sustainable, and inclusive for all residents. Today I'm here to discuss the City of Waterloo's official plan review and how it can better support our shared vision for the city's growth and development. First, I want to acknowledge the thoughtful work that's gone into the draft OP. It reflects a clear desire to balance intensification goals with the character and livability of our community. We also recognize the focus on areas like Uptown, major transit station areas, and key nodes and corridors, initiatives that align with best practices for creating walkable, connected, and sustainable cities. But as much as the OP has evolved, so too has its complexity. Over the years, we've observed that the OP has become increasingly detailed and at times overly prescriptive. This shift has real consequences, not just for developers, but for the broader community that benefits from timely and thoughtful city building projects. The purpose of the OP, as we see it, is to set a vision, to guide growth, set priorities, and articulate high-level principles for development. It should inspire and align. The details, like height restrictions, density limits, and precise urban design requirements, belong in the zoning bylaw and/or guideline documents, where they can be applied with consideration for site-specific context and with flexibility, allowing them to be updated as conditions change. For example, it was our understanding that today's recommendation to council, there's a portion of it today, it's section 3.4 in built form. I'm not 100% clear if that's being passed today or not. We were under the impression that it was, but it has categories and height limits. So Main Street, minimum height of 2 stories, medium rise employment, max height of 9 stories. We saw MTSA with up to 30 stories. So unfortunately, when the OP dives into this level of detail, it creates unnecessary hurdles. Developers face additional fees, lengthier approval processes, and added uncertainty, all of which can slow down the delivery of much needed housing and commercial spaces. Overly specific policies on building heights and floor plates can delay generational development projects and ultimately prevent us from meeting our intensification goals. And this isn't just a concern for developers. When projects are delayed, communities are delayed in receiving the benefits they bring, whether it's affordable housing, new employment hubs, or vibrant public spaces. It's in everyone's interest to streamline and clarify the OP's role so it remains a strategic guiding document rather than a restrictive checklist. So on that note, I also want to address the 2-phase approach to the OP review. While we understand the need to access the Housing Accelerator Fund and the urgency of moving forward with some of these updates, we don't understand the need to break the process into 2 phases. This is arguably one of the most important documents that the City of Waterloo is responsible for. And this importance shouldn't be upstaged by any deadlines set by the Housing Accelerator Fund that may or may not even exist by the end of 2025. If phase 2 is simply going to add on some more onerous rules and regulations to the mix, we risk making an already complex process even more challenging. Developers in the community at large need clarity and consistency, not added layers of complexity. If we're working towards a more streamlined and effective OP, which is what I'm hearing, we're concerned about this piecemeal approach because it could actually undermine the very goals we're trying to achieve. We've seen how this trend of increasing detail in OPs across municipalities has led to more amendments, appeals, and unnecessary red tape. Waterloo has the opportunity to lead by example and create a framework that is flexible, efficient, and focused on a shared vision for growth. So on behalf of the Build Urban members, we're urging Council to defer the recommendations, doing this once and not phased. This will ensure that the official plan remains what it was intended to be, a very high-level strategic document that sets the stage for innovation and growth. Let's leave the specifics to the zoning bylaw, where it can be appropriately contextualized and implemented. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Melissa, and thanks for coming in well under the 10 minutes. Just hold on a minute and we'll see if there's any questions from any members of council. Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. Thanks for coming in, Melissa.
Nice to see you, Councillor Freeman.
The comments that you're providing are a bit of a curiosity because really all that I understand is happening in section 3.4 is moving from what was approved when you were sitting at the table with me from 6 meters, and instead of doing
I'm not here as a former city councillor right now.
We're doing stories, right? So like in my mind's eye, we haven't really changed a lot from the existing OP. So is the suggestion that the existing OP is wrong?
So what we are suggesting at Build Urban, I'm here representing Build Urban and not my former position, but what I can tell you is we would like to see no stories, no height restrictions. So we can use terms like medium-rise employment, and then once we get into the zoning bylaw, it can be more prescriptive. Up to 30 stories. I mean, I can use an example of when I did sit around this horseshoe, we thought 18 stories was like crazy high, and we now know that that's not the case. Things change, things move in this community. That's what the zoning bylaw is for. The official plan is looking out 25 years. We have no idea what the city is going to look like in 25 years as far as height, and we can start to say these are some of the things we'd like to see in these sort of the heat maps and such. But putting prescriptive numbers on it, I don't think does us any good.
Okay.
As a community.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't see substantive changes in this section from what we've approved in the past. And so for me, it's always been about a process. And if you're going in for a ZBA or an OPA ZBA combined, it's not a substantially different application process. And I guess, you know, it's fine. I don't have another question. I mean, the whole thing about having an OPA, an OP, and a ZB is that you've put a line in the sand, recognizing that some things will advance by right of zoning, and other things will go through a process. And I don't see a substantive change in the process brought on by these changes in the OP. We might have to agree to disagree on that, and that's fair. But I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Through you, Mayor McCabe. I think ultimately what we'd like to say is maybe now is the chance, and that's what we're hearing from the staff as well, is to create a document that is a bit more higher level. And what we're saying is, yes, we agree with that. Continue to go on that. And we'd like to see less prescriptive numbers in it so that it gives the next councils and the councils in the future the opportunity to figure out what that looks like in a zoning bylaw, but the official plan is the big guiding document.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Freeman. Any questions of the delegate? Okay, seeing none, thanks very much, Melissa. I appreciate your presentation and responses. And the next delegate is Laura Jameson, Intermediate Planner, Salinka Priamo Limited. Welcome. Thanks for coming in tonight. You have 10 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you, and good evening, Mayor McCabe, members of council, and city staff. As mentioned, my name is Laura Jameson. I'm an intermediate planner with Salinka Priamo. I'm here on behalf of one of our clients, 551 Conestoga Development Corporation, who owns some land here in Waterloo, who will be impacted by the changes proposed with OPA 58 in front of you. We did submit written comments previously, just outlining our client's intentions with the lands, and I'm just here to speak to some of those items today. So our client, again, owns lands in Waterloo. They're known municipally as 551 King Street North, generally located kitty corner to the Conestoga Mall and the Conestoga Ion Station. While our client generally supports the intent of the proposed changes, facilitating increased intensity and intensification across the city of Waterloo, we have some concerns surrounding the requirement of non-residential uses as part of every future development within the mixed-use community designation, which is what our client's lands would be going into. It's our client's request that the draft policies be modified to encourage mixed-use development, but provide flexibility to allow for the consideration of standalone residential uses in specific circumstances within this designation. For some background, in July 2024, our client submitted a formal pre-consultation package to the City of Waterloo for high-rise, high-density residential development consisting of two 30-story towers with a total of 871 residential units. The package was prepared in part by us as Lincoln Primo and in part by Reinders & Law architecture firm. Prior to this submission, as sort of our own due diligence, we did complete a commercial land needs assessment and a residential market analysis, both done through Urban Metrics, to confirm that commercial uses were not required in this location, and also just sort of outline the potential mix of residential units that would be best suited for our subject lands. These reports did confirm that residential uses could be supported as there was an abundance of commercial uses in the area, being the Conestoga Mall, again, kitty corner to our lands. Based on our calculations, if a commercial element at the ground level of this proposed development was required, approximately 25 residential units would be lost. Now, that doesn't necessarily seem like a lot when you're talking about 871 units, but you know, for the 25 families that could potentially be in those residential units, it does make an impact. It is our professional opinion that the unnecessary loss of these units in an area that is saturated by existing commercial uses would be a missed opportunity by the City of Waterloo to create a more complete community around this Ion Station. Thank you so much for your time and consideration of this request, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, and again, for coming in well under the 10 minutes. Councillor Freeman.
Through Mayor McCabe, I noticed that your planning firm provided comments on various properties, but you're only speaking to this particular one today?
Through the mayor, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Councillor Basak.
Through you, Mayor, I have a question for staff, though, based on this delegation. May I?
I'll just check with the clerk. Yes, okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Simply curious for your perspective on this request.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Basak. So the updated mixed-use community designation, it allows both residential and commercial uses. So in this particular area, not specific to just the site, but the area surrounding it, the reason for this designation in part is to implement some of the direction from the stationary planning. The stationary plans that were approved by council back in 2017 noted in areas around LRT stops in particular that there should be active uses on the ground floor. And so that's what the designation attempts to require. So yes, commercial is one of the components that would fulfill that need for active uses, but there are other uses that could be on the ground floor that meet the active frontage component. So I would say it's fairly more permissive than it is currently as far as commercial uses. There's also community uses that would be acceptable. and non-retail commercial uses as well, so personal services. So I think there's a wide range of uses, not getting too many specifics, but the intent there is to create active frontage, especially in priority areas near LRT stops.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Freeman, did you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted, sorry, I don't have another question for the delegate, so I didn't want to make her wait at the podium, but it's another question for staff kind of on this same.
Does anyone have another question for the delegate right now? Okay, thanks very much. Go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
So I do recall the MTSA work that was done for that station. And so if I understand correctly, you're bringing in that work without change into this currently?
I'll backtrack a little bit. So currently for this site and the surrounding areas, the designation is mixed-use office. And so that's one of the designations that staff are recommending that we remove and move away from. We feel that the mixed-use community designation would be more appropriate. There's different commercial uses that we could have applied. We feel that that's the one that's most appropriate for that area, close proximity to the LRT stops, because of the active frontage uses. So it is consistent with the MTSA work that was done in 2017. It's not directly implementing it, but it's consistent with that direction is what I would say.
Okay, so there's different uses that are being considered, an expanded list of permitted uses. So I guess my other question is like, if we are going to be using this language, should we also be including language around convertible commercial? I mean, obviously, if it doesn't rent, it would be bad to put someone through another process. So could it be that they're convertible uses instead?
Through the mayor to the council, yes, there is updated language in the updated designation that does talk to convertible frontage and making sure that the units can be used for other things down the road.
So when you say it's updated language, you mean updated between the draft that was released in June and now, or updated since when? I'm trying to understand when the comments from this delegate may or may not have been incorporated into what we're seeing tonight.
To the mayor, to the councillor. So one of the earlier pieces that we did was consolidate the commercial designations. So the mixed-use community is a bit of a merger of the mixed-use neighborhood commercial and mixed-use community commercial. So there's one designation. So those provisions for active frontage in certain areas and convertible frontage, those were in the earlier drafts. We've maintained those going forward. Those comments that we received from the delegate, I believe they're in September. So we did not update the policies accordingly. We felt that the designation was appropriate. So there wasn't any change based on those comments in particular.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, we'll call the next delegate, which is Ryan Mounsey, CEO, Urban Insights, Inc. Welcome, Ryan. You have 10 minutes.
Council members, audience. I'll first of all would like to congratulate you on the award surplus lands earlier today. I heard Dr. Seasons talking about it being a legacy project, and I couldn't agree more. So congratulations on city building, and what a great initiative. It is a bold vision that you did, and so are official plans. I will hope to be under 10 minutes as well, because everyone else is. Next slide, please. Just a few points. What I heard about what the plan is today is 3 core pillars. I heard it was about streamlined approvals, missing middle housing, and complete and connected communities. My primary goal here today is to ask for a whole series of properties to be deferred so we can work through the process like the other properties. If some of you may have recalled Northdale, there was a series of properties last minute that were put on the list that we were able to go through a process. I'm asking for the exact same thing, to defer these properties to give us the time to work through the policies and the issues, the planning issues tied to them. The background for that, the justification for that is to be bold. I would say there is a big difference between official plans and zone changes, and the applications are different, the timelines are different, the circulation's different, and the whole process in terms of what we're looking at right now is we have a new provincial planning policy, PPS. What I didn't see as a core issue was transit supportive communities. And what I'm going to get back to is about the issue of height. One of my core issues here is to defer a bunch of the properties in here to look at height. I was part of the development group that talked about having no height restrictions like Kitchener downtown. 20 years ago, the height and density policy was created in 2000. That was when the 25-story height limit was introduced. We're asking for a 17% increase in height from going from 25 stories to 30. That's incremental. I agree this is an incremental plan. I'm looking for a bold plan, and that's why I'm asking these properties to be deferred. And to go move forward, property prices have doubled, tripled. Land prices doubled and tripled. We're talking about 17% increase in height. So that's the premise of what I'm talking about today, is to bring a planning rationale and argument to kindly ask council's consideration to ask for a series of properties to be deferred. All these properties deal with height, and also to see more robust language on transit supportive development, reduce parking. I spend a lot of time in Waterloo right now trying to whittle down parking requirements. I like to see a stronger policy basis for that so that when we eventually get to the zoning bylaw stage, the rules are more flexible and conducive based off the policies. And so if we have stronger language on minor corridors as an example for reduced parking standards, that would go a long way to leverage these regional arterial roads with transit service. So I'm spending a lot of time nickel and diming on, is it 50% reduction, 40% reduction? I like to see just clear, better policy language in transit supportive communities. And that's part of the rationale to defer some of these properties to work through some of these issues so I spend less time doing application work. There's one example for one property that is actually too small. So we want to protect that one, that it can continue to evolve and to grow with minor growth versus being consolidated. So it goes both ways in this case in terms of the policies I'm asking to be deferred, in terms of just saying we could take a little bit more time. And that's what I'm asking for. In addition to the housing crisis, my apologies, it's 16,000 units, not 19,000, that's my error, is that we have very low vacancy rates, and I think you have a community dedicated on delivering housing. You're leading it, we can follow suit, but create the policy basis that's more robust. Don't be incremental, be aggressive and be bold about it. Remove the height caps on a lot of the properties in the uptown. Treat the MTSA. This is one open-ended location. That was my recommendations in the development teams. That didn't get carried through. Treat it as an open slate that all the properties within then can be governed through the zoning. And if you have that case in there, you can have properties that can be consolidated with mixed zoning, mixed heights. Just open it up. And so see where that goes. So it's a different policy vision, a different policy approach, but we have a new PPS and we have a housing crisis. Rise of the missing middle. To commend staff and the work that's being done, the missing middle housing. Tremendous strides are being done to allow for more minor incremental housing being done across the city. I would say max it out, go with the 4 units. Build on the leverage, some successes, and see what happens. So you're going to see this hockey stick curve. You're going to see more people converting these units. You're going to see more people looking at different housing options as it gets more and more expensive. But you need really, really aggressive parking reductions. And to have those parking reductions like 0.6 per space per unit, that's the type of parking reductions you need for that. And that's where I spend a lot of my time, about a quarter of my time, just dealing with those really important details at zoning. So the zoning has to be right, but create the policy basis. Next slide, please.
Oh, you can advance your slides.
Oh, can I?
Yeah, with the mouse right there.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a while. Talked about the properties. This is my last slide. And these are the properties that I'd like to ask to be deferred. They're all written. They're emailed to the clerks. And I'd like to work through them just to make sure that we can have the time to go through the planning aspects of these development applications and to work through it so that we don't have to get bogged up with the details of this plan. And I think you'll see some people that would be quite appreciative of your consideration with that. That's all I have to say. I appreciate the good work that's being done, but it's about being bold. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you very much, Mr. Bouncy. Questions from council of the delegate? Okay, question for staff. Any questions for the delegate? Go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
You made a comment about mixed zoning, mixed heights, like facilitated through consolidation. I'm trying to understand how these OP changes prevent that from happening.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Freeman, there continues to be a whole series of height caps in the official plan. And so what I'm looking at is to work through a process to increase the heights on these applications through this process, even though there's a phase 2 and to work through. Generally speaking, there needs to be a lot more room and policy flexibility related to these properties. And so that's what I'm asking for the time, is to look at, to defer this, just to examine this in more detail based off the work that you're contemplating today.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I'll thank you for your time, and we will, oh, sorry, you had a question of staff. Councillor Bodley.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Through you, Mayor McCabe, I'm wondering if you could speak to the comments from the delegate around transit supportive development and sort of where that's how that's envisioned within the OP. I certainly saw references to it, and I think the whole intent of the major transit station areas is obviously to support transit. So I'm wondering if maybe you could provide some additional context from your lens in working through the OP and how important transit supportive development is.
Great question, Councillor Bodley. Yeah, in 2017, we brought an official plan amendment forward to leverage ION, and a lot of the bones of that are within this new version of the official plan as well, so in this OPA. And yeah, we really realize, and the strategic growth areas and looking at higher heights is part of that. Some of the strengthened urban design considerations and considerations around large sites as well, and looking to to set some expectations around the types of community uses and really how to leverage these large intensifying properties and create complete communities is showing up in the official plan review as well. So, the trajectory of the city is really around leveraging ION and growing up and maturing to a great extent in those strategic growth areas. And from my perspective, the policies really look to enable that. They do, though, set some expectations for the community around what types of heights they're going to see. It's my opinion that if you ask someone who doesn't know a lot about planning, what the density of a property is, I think that's, generally people don't understand what that means, but they do understand how many stories tall a building is, and so we are looking to provide, some certainty to the community as to what a 6-story area would look like, or where that would fall, 12 stories as well as 30. And then want to look at that some more through the next phase.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Just a sec. Mr. Moundsey, you can sit down because there's no more questions of the delegate. Yeah, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
Sorry, thank you. Through Mayor McCabe. Related question, particularly since you alluded to it, and we've had a couple of delegates speak to this already. Did staff contemplate what the implications of removing all height references in the OP are, or perhaps looking at removing height restrictions in the OP in major transit station areas, or perhaps in prime major transit station areas? Was that considered by staff at all? And can you provide some context as to why maybe we're not seeing that today, and if that is going to be considered going forward as we look into phase 2?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, we did consider it. It's something, and we are working with an architecture and planning firm to understand what the heights, in terms of a structure could look like, as well as what Mr. Martin's referred to. as well as how to regulate density in the zoning bylaw. And so, you know, we're leaning on the expertise of an outside firm for that, very much doing that work now. You know, there are other cities that are looking at different heights. London, for example, has brought forward a framework that contemplates up to 45 stories in their strategic growth areas. And so, you know, there's a lot of different options there. 30 stories is, from a staff perspective, where we landed on, but we did contemplate, you know, the range of options, I would say. I would say, though, that as we got closer towards this particular date, really we realized that we thought that it makes sense to undertake community consultations so that we could hear, because we were hearing from the development industry pretty loudly and clearly, but didn't feel like there was a lot of voices from, you know, the community and folks that come to the chambers when they're unhappy about a file. We weren't hearing a lot from them.
Thank you, Mr.
I have a
Lauder.
follow-up related
Okay.
to that, sorry, based on the.
That's okay.
Based on the response there. If it were to be unlimited in certain areas, and I'm not necessarily advocating for that, I'm asking a question. If it were to be unlimited in major transit station areas, for example, do we feel like the zoning bylaw is sufficient to handle those concerns if we were, you know, as some of the delegates and as some of the development community have highlighted to us, you know, keep the OP very high level and be more prescriptive in the zoning bylaw? Do we feel like the zoning bylaw is equipped to be able to handle what may emerge from allowing in the OP unlimited height?
Very good question. From my perspective, what a system like that, a feature of that system would be that the community would lose the ability to expect the types of heights in different locations, because there would be site-specific applications without you know, a guiding document that sets a framework as to what the general heights are for that area. So I think that there would be some loss of control, certainly from council, and in some cases, you know, that might make its way through the OLT system as well on site specifics. But I think from the community perspective, you know, the question that you asked, what I really think of is that a feature of that system would be that you would have varying heights along different streets based off of site-specific applications.
Thank you, Mr. Lauder. Councillor Bassick has a question.
Thanks through you, Mayor. I'm curious, we have all of these recommendations to defer, and then we have another list from Ryan from the last delegate to defer other properties. So I guess I'm kind of feeling like, what the heck? We've got a whole bunch here, 00. Should we just add some more? If so, why? If not, why not?
Certainly, yeah, we did receive this request today at 4:30. We were able to look at, I would say we're taking Mr. Mounsey at his word in terms of some of the property addresses. We haven't been able to verify the accuracy of them. So for the Huther, for example, we haven't been able to look at all of those particular properties, and I'd want to confirm that those properties aren't owned by others that aren't the Huther. Maybe Mr. Mounsey can confirm that. But, you know, I think it does make some sense to consider deferral for these particular properties based off of what Mr. Mounsey's put forward. And I know, for example, the 175 Park Street, the cluster of properties that are first on his PowerPoint, I believe is an interested landowner that is looking forward to developing at some point in the future. So happy to bring these forward, but would like, I think it does make some sense for Mr. Mounsey to confirm the Huther properties again, that listing, that those are all under control of the client that he represents.
Yeah, that makes good sense. It sounds like it's just too late, so you don't want to do it sort of like willy-nilly. That's a weird saying. But but it just came out still. I couldn't stop it. Anyways. Anyways, I feel fine adding those if we're gonna approve all these ones. Anyways, I feel fine adding them as long as the due diligence is done in advance of like going ahead with it. So I don't know how best to do that.
Can I just add to a question to that? The delegate Laura Jameson, like, were you considering her request as well in that, or were you just thinking of just the most recent delegate?
Well, no, because what I understood, sorry, through you, Mayor, what I understood from Councillor Freeman's line of questioning, and then the responses that I heard before I left to go take a break, were that it sounds like there's flexible uses permitted there, and so it's not just going to be commercial, which would allegedly conflict with Conestoga Mall. So unless I misunderstood that, no, I was just asking about Ryan's.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And I guess I would just also add that, it is kind of challenging when things like this come in right at the last minute, right? Because this has been a process that's been going on for nearly, 6 months or so? So, in the future, it is really difficult to kind of just do this on the fly. As Mr. Adam Lauder was just saying, like, we can't confirm the properties and the ownership and things like that, so.
If I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I guess 2 of the properties, 5 Bridgeport Road and 15 Bridgeport Road, that are recommended for deferral, if you want to just pull up the slide there, are owned by the city. That's kind of what I was referring to when I was asking for the properties to be confirmed as to ownership. So.
Yeah, that's curious why those are on the list.
Yeah.
So what's your recommendation then, Mr. Adam?
Well, what I would recommend is, I think it has some implications for council if they were to defer their own properties. And council has the ability to do that. I think Mr. Moundsey's recommendation, I believe, was based off of his client's requests, and so from my perspective, I would strike those properties out unless council wished to defer the properties.
I'm seeing head shaking here, so I would say no, we can strike those off of this list. I'm just also going to look to the clerk to say, are we following the proper procedures here?
Through the mayor, I think that it's really important to have a good understanding of what council's being asked to consider. So you do have a revised report with a list of addresses and a recommendation presented. So at this point, this is not up for council consideration. At the appropriate time, you would want to have a mover and a seconder that, if someone wished, would be to approve the revised staff report as written with the inclusion of this list of addresses or an alternate list of addresses. So I think it's okay to ask the questions now, but you have not closed the formal public meeting, so you probably don't want to start debating it at this stage. I think you're just looking for clarification on how to proceed forward.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's helpful. And so, sorry, Councillor Vasek, did you have a follow-up or?
Not right now. No, that's all very helpful information. Yes, thanks.
Okay. And I guess just part of my question to staff through this, because we've heard it from a couple of different delegates talking about unrestricted height and that, and referring to, this is a way to address the housing crisis. But can you remind me how many housing units are in Waterloo have already been, are already approved to be built, that the building permits haven't been pulled?
Certainly, yeah, I believe that that particular number is around 4,400 units that are sitting with approval but not a building permit pulled. And there's another subset of a larger number of roughly 30,000 units that are in various stages of the development pipeline. And then a larger number, and we have done some analysis, it's in this, referred to in this report, of within nodes and corridors, building to the maximum heights and densities that are there today, that there's capacity for around 260,000 bedrooms that are not built today. So there's a lot of capacity. I would say that council in 2003, 2005, 2012, you know, and all the way through as this particular council deals with applications, has created a lot of capacity.
So just to repeat, you said about 3,500? Did I get that number right?
Pardon me, 4,400.
Sorry, 4,000, sorry, it's been a long day. 4,400 that are already approved. Could be, if the developers came forward and pulled those building permits, we would happily give them to them today. Okay, and then we have an additional 30,000 that are somewhere in the development pipeline that could be, you know, they're getting closer to approval. That's a big number too. And then 260,000 beds, which I don't know what that relates to in terms of units, but I guess part of what I'm curious about after hearing a couple of people say, you know, take the height restrictions off in that because this is a way to address the housing crisis. It's like if some of these development units had been put into the market and had been built a few years ago, I mean, certainly that would have alleviated some of the housing crisis. But I mean, in your professional opinions, I'll look at all three of you, and Mr. Cotter's here as well, is unrestricted height really sort of the way to solve a housing crisis when we have this much capacity already in the market? Or sorry, already in the official plan?
I would also note that, you know, in the low-rise residential areas, the maximum height has moved from 3 to 4 stories, just as, you know, from other contexts. And, you know, there's a subset of the community that's going to want to live in a high-rise, just like there's a subset, and I think in a community like this, you know, there's a lot of land in the suburbs, and folks would like to live there as well. So a large percentage of the residential areas have changed heights, maximum permitted heights through this particular official plan review. I focus as well on the low-rise residential because I think that that provides opportunity for folks to live in, you know, missing middle or kind of ground-oriented housing. It's not my opinion. I'm not sure. I'll turn it over to other folks, but I don't think that unlimited height everywhere is required to solve the housing crisis.
Thank you, Mr. Lauder. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to say, but we do have some other delegates to get to, so I probably shouldn't ask staff too many questions, but Councillor Freeman.
Well, still on the question of building height maximums, it appears to me that our colleagues in the region also have building height maximums within their OP, unless I'm reading them incorrectly. Is that true?
Yeah, it is true. Kitchener recently did modify for their strategic growth areas, and they measure density differently, but they did take a much more liberal approach. And so for their strategic growth areas, it's closer to unlimited. Yeah, and so they are seeing, in fairness, they're seeing some fairly tall buildings going through the pipeline that would require an official plan amendment in Waterloo. And so, you know, I don't know if the conversation today is about can that building exist, but it's really around the process.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll go to the next delegate. Apologies for the delay there. Trevor Hawkins, partner, MHBC Planning. Welcome, Trevor. And you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor McCabe. I'm going to shift completely off of housing and height and density and building all kinds of tall buildings to our institutions. I'm here on behalf of Wilfrid Laurier University, and we engaged with my colleagues at Laurier, with Adam and Rick, a few times through the OP review process. We've made submissions, we met with them, we talked through a number of the key interests that Laurier had for their lands in the community. And most of Laurier's requests were satisfactorily addressed. But I'm here tonight to talk about two that we'd like to see changed before Council adopts OPA 58. And I did make a submission. I see my letter is on the list. I hope Council's seen it. But essentially, there's two policies that I'm here to speak to. The first deals with campus master planning. And there is a policy proposed in the academic designation. Wouldn't just apply to Laurier, but speaking on behalf of Laurier. It outlines a whole host of things that a university would have to do when they're doing their campus master planning. And from Laurier's perspective, it's not about not engaging with the city or the region, because of course there's regional interests when it comes to Laurier's campus. And it's not about not engaging with the community. It's more about Laurier has been doing campus master planning. They have historically engaged with the city, of course, and the region and the community when doing so. They are experts in campus master planning. They know what they're doing. They know their campus better than anybody. And they would like to do their campus master planning without the required structure that's proposed within the OP that sort of tells them exactly what they need to do and how to do it and what it needs to be, what needs to be included, and so on and so forth. So the revised wording I had proposed in my letter before Council effectively encourages campus master planning, and then it leaves it to Laurier to do the campus master planning and engage with the city and the region as they normally do and normally would. So it's more about taking some of that directive language out of the policy and really leaving it to Laurier to guide their own campus master planning while continuing to consult as they have in the past with community members, including the city. The second one is about, well, it is about housing, and it's more about housing on the campus itself. So you will certainly have heard many stories, read many articles about the financial crunches that universities are facing. And one of the ways to work around that, or to sort of find a solution towards that crunch, is to partner with other entities when it comes to providing campus housing on the campus for students or for faculty, etc. The sort of notion that Laurier can own and build and operate all of the housing that they may require to support the students and faculty on a go-forward basis is perhaps not realistic in this day and age. And it's more realistic to allow some flexibility for them to partner with a third party who may build the building. Laurier owns the land. The third party builds the building. Maybe Laurier operates that building after it's built. Maybe the third party operates the building after it's built. These are the types of partnerships that other universities, and I can speak from experience in University of Guelph, has done many of these. So Laurier had proposed language that would clarify some of the wording that was proposed in the OP, which appeared to effectively say that Laurier had to own and operate the housing on their campus, whereas Laurier had proposed alternative wording that would encourage housing on their campus. Who operated the building, who built the building, was less important as to whether it was physically on the campus and was providing housing, which they're interested and certainly looking forward to doing. So what I had structured in that letter was really tweaks or modifications to two existing policies. And in all other respects, we're certainly happy with the conversations as they've gone on with Adam and Rick, and we know there's more to do in phase 2, but really that's what I'm here for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Can I just a clarification, when you say campus master planning for Laurier, are you referring specifically to the parts of their campus that's bounded by University, King, Bricker, and Albert, or are you talking about any parts of where they have buildings, you know, they have some back on Lodge Street and other locations.
Well, that would all be part of the campus master planning
You're
exercise.
talking about it all, okay. Thanks for that, just a clarification. Councillor Freeman.
Sorry, I don't think I understood the answer. Is it just the lands they own?
Yes, in terms of their campus master planning, yeah.
That's helpful. I don't recall seeing your wording on this. Do we have your wording handy? Like, cause I'm a little confused why we put this much prescriptiveness in our OP as it relates to campus master planning, because if I understand correctly, that essentially puts the institutions in a situation where they have to almost go through an OPA, which doesn't really make sense to me. And I would like to better understand the alternative wording, so thank you.
Thanks for pulling that up so quickly, Rook.
Yeah.
And through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Freeman, I'm sure Rick and Adam would point out that the way the policy is worded as proposed by staff wouldn't necessarily obligate Laurier to do an OPA. Of course, they're exempt from the Planning Act, of course, but it's sort of an encourage policy, but it's a very firmly worded encourage policy in that it's very specific and it uses should. So I think Laurier is just not entirely comfortable with, you know, to be blunt, being told how to master plan their campus.
Did you have a follow-up question, Councillor? We have the letter on the screen here.
I can see, like, I can see your point in this, and so I just wanted to, I was trying to find your letter in my vast inbox. So that I think this is probably something to consider as we get towards recommendations and motions, but I appreciate your time. I didn't have another question for you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Is there another question for the delegate? I think there's a couple of questions from staff on this particular point. So thanks, Trevor. Really appreciate it. Councillor Bodley.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking through you, Mayor McCabe. I'm looking to staff to see whether or not the language that was proposed by the previous delegate is amenable to staff. I think particularly noting what the delegate was highlighting around the fact that the university does not have to engage with the city on these matters. I think we would want to encourage them to do so in the spirit of partnership. But I'm looking for comments from staff on whether that was amenable, should council consider adopting those recommendations.
Certainly, yeah. It's, you know, from a staff perspective, we're looking to help to really align infrastructure for the post-secondary institutions, and that's really a starting point. And to work that into capital plans and programs and make sure that, you know, all of the infrastructure works in the community. You know, from my perspective, Waterloo is very lucky, and I know I've said that to Mr. Hawkins and the institutions when we met with them. We're very lucky to have them here in Waterloo, obviously. And so, you know, they are exempt from the Planning Act as well. That's a new feature. And, you know, if council wishes to bring forward, contemplate a motion that looks similar to Mr. Hawkins' wording, that works fine for staff.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, it is my preference to do that. It's timing.
Right, we'll do that. We'll do that after all the delegates are done, delegations are done. Any other comments or questions there? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move to the next delegate, which is Kevin Thomason, Vice Chair, Grand River Environmental Network. Welcome, Kevin. You have 10 minutes.
Kevin Thomason, and I'm lucky to live in the Laurel Creek Headwaters environmentally sensitive landscape atop the Waterloo Moraine on the west side of Waterloo. I'm presenting tonight in my capacity as Vice Chair of the Grand River Environmental Network, a group of activists, watchdogs, and stewards for the environment across the Grand River watershed. For decades, we have worked with our communities on official plans to help ensure the necessary balance between dynamic, sustainable urban areas and thriving natural areas. Thank you for all the hard work and effort that has gone into this update to the visionary City of Waterloo official plan that will continue this council's legacy. While few citizens will ever read an official plan, it is the guiding document for this entire city for decades, deciding where and how we will grow, what will be protected, what will be destroyed, how we will live, where we will work, how we will get around, and so much more. We need to ensure that it will set the right tone and ambitions for the coming decades, particularly in light of the loss of regional planning authority and our leading regional official plan this coming January 1st. The progressive intensification and smart growth principles of this new official plan, growing up instead of out, that protects farmland, the environment, and essential groundwater recharge areas, will help to maximize the most efficient use of infrastructure and help to ensure sustainability and housing affordability with complete walkable neighborhoods. The focus on active transportation, public transit, and trails will help define the values of our community and ensure that even with considerable population growth, our city remains easy to get around and a desirable place to live. The City of Waterloo has been an environmental leader since the days that I'd stand at this same green podium and address Mayor Marjorie Carroll, Mayor Joan McKinnon, and Mayor Lynn Wollstonecroft more than 30 years ago as we worked on previous official plans. Each of these mayors pushed boundaries and led with so many ambitious efforts that have helped to shape our community today. Yet, despite our climate crisis and so much more environmental awareness throughout our current society, we are facing more pressures for urban sprawl and unsustainable development than ever. It seems that almost every other level of government and so many other municipalities are advocating environmental destruction at an alarming rate, at a time we know we need to be doing much better. This official plan is unique. We are building a city that isn't 70% urban sprawl of greenfield single detached homes. It is a good news story and different than most other cities. It is so refreshing to see this visionary leadership of the City of Waterloo Council and city staff to not sprawl. Please know that the public is with you. The vast majority of Canadians are concerned about climate change and are expecting our governments to be doing more. This official plan amendment provides the progressive, sustainable plan we need and a brilliant model for other communities. It will be so important for the City of Waterloo to continue its leadership and make Marjorie, Joan, Lynn, Brian, Herb, Brenda, Dave, and other previous mayors proud. Please be visionary, bold, and world-class. We all know that there are many areas that this official plan could go even further. If Waterloo is going to be world-class in the years ahead, we need to surpass not just Ottawa, Calgary, or Austin, but leading cities in Europe and Asia that are vaulting ahead in so many ways. My children and our entire community are counting on you to ensure that this plan is innovative enough to ensure that we'll be amongst the best and most vibrant cities in the world. In conclusion, you have strong public support. We have a visionary official plan draft before us, at least phase 1. Let's ensure that it is successfully approved and that Waterloo is one of the most successful and desirable places in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. That certainly is a bold vision for the City of Waterloo. Appreciate those comments. Any comments, questions for the delegate? Councillor Freeman.
Just curiosity, you've heard the comments on the official plan tonight.
Yeah.
Are there wholesale changes you think we should make tonight?
I don't think so. I think one of the things that is encouraging is almost every one of the delegates tonight has mentioned their interactions with staff, discussions with staff, that they've been heard, that most of their concerns being addressed or things like that. I think that's a sign of collaboration that then again may or may not be common in other communities and yet is common here. So I don't think we're far off. I think questions of foregoing height maximums or things like that, interesting, they're out there, maybe worth considering, maybe worth further dialogue on. But I think for the most part, we're 98% 8% there. That, you know, and I don't think we can overlook how unique things are in this community and how different than it is elsewhere. You know, the pressures to sprawl, the things that are done that are just taken here for granted that would be so unfathomable elsewhere. And yet we've shown with decades of success, this community is firing on all cylinders. We continue to attract the best minds, the best universities, the best students, the best startups. And we heard Ruth from the Accelerator Center here earlier tonight talking about the startups and the potential and the need. You know, what we're doing isn't wrong. We need to just keep doing it. And I mentioned the previous mayors because there were a lot of bold things back then. LRT was not an easy decision. You know, Countryside Line was not an easy decision. Environmentally sensitive landscape. Repealing hundreds of acres of land the city of Waterloo didn't have to create the ESL. There's been so many bold and visionary things that these mayors have done before. We need to make sure that this official plan that sets the tone for the next 30 years. In fact, it was actually interesting reading through all 439 pages or whatever. It's horrendously long. And seeing the redacted ones and crossed out and thinking, oh, 2029 and 2031. And I remember when that sounded so far into the future. And yet here it is just around the corner. Growth to 138,000. Well, heck, we're there. Now it's, you know, almost 195,000 or whatever. So I think, you know, we just need to keep that spirit, keep that innovation, and keep moving forward.
Thank you. Just on the population, I saw a sign at Northfield just yesterday that said we're at 160,000.
Yeah.
But other signs say 148, so, or 146, so. We're growing fast and the numbers keep changing.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, thanks Kevin for that vote of confidence in the OP, and hopefully we can all live up to the legacy that the other mayors you mentioned have set out, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Keep up the great work.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, our next delegate is Kay Algie, and Kay, welcome Kay, resident of Waterloo, and she has a presentation. Thank you for joining us tonight, Kay.
Welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And yes, and thank you. I have a lot of thank yous. I really want to thank the staff for listening to citizens and for acknowledging and incorporating their views. And I think I might tie with Councillor Vasic for the most picky little questions, but anyway, I really appreciate it. But you know, there's a lot from professional planners too. And I mean, I really appreciate the fact that that was listened to. And I do especially want to thank you for continuing to honor your 2019 and 2021 commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, declaring a climate emergency and committing to do the 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And I see that reflected in the PAN. I think statements like this is a statement that it is growth that mitigates and adapts to the impacts of a changing climate. By planning for more environmentally sustainable and resilient communities, and infrastructure that advances Waterloo's energy transition off of fossil fuels and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I also want to thank you for continuing to intensify ways to protect the high-quality farmland in Waterloo region. And this particular phrase really strikes me because it was one of those hundreds, probably thousands of citizens that worked so hard on the regional official plan in 2022 that did protect that countryside line, and that was subsequently undone by Housing Minister Clark and then Calandra. So it's really encouraging to me to see that at least the city of Waterloo is still considering that a permanent boundary. It means a lot. And I'm happy to see this continued idea about, well, some call it gentle intensification, incremental intensification, because I think that is well, let's face it, we can't expand our boundaries, so that's a way to go. But it also recognizes that we can grow in ways that aren't just height, that we will continue to look at various methods that maybe can go faster than these big projects we approve, but market conditions don't encourage. And like Councillor Vasic, I am excited to see this idea about greater commercial spaces being incorporated into communities. I like that a lot. But particularly, I am really pleased to see this language that talks about intensifying in ways that respect communities and the people who live in them. Because change is hard, and most people don't like change, especially if it's imposed upon them, and that comes with neighborhoods too, and I know we have to accept that. But I think there are ways to bring that in, and I see the official plan as the way to do that. We think through some of these things, so we're not struck at the last minute with, oh, I want this to be 50 stories high, without thinking about what are the implications for the community on that. So I was pleased to see this language, these suggestions about how requests for increased heights would be considered, and some of the factors. I like a lot of them, like the enhanced active transportation connections. I think that's really important because even at Committee of Adjustment, we're seeing questions, and there are no parking requirements. That's fine, but how do people get their Uber Eats? Or how do they get their Amazon delivery if there's no parking, not even a laneway in a place, you know? So I like considering all these things. To me, that is important in an official plan, looking at the way we are going to build our city in the future. So things like enhanced sustainable design and sustainable building features, conservation of cultural heritage, increased parkland, because that's another thing too. If you build cities really tall, really fast, are there any parks? Is there any green space? Is it a community still, you know? And so I really like that quote from Jane Jacobs, that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. And to me, that's what an official planning process is all about. It's about that ability to have all these details so we don't have to make these quick decisions at the end. So I do want to thank you again for respecting the intensive community involvement, careful study, and immense work that went into the regional official plan. And I was really pleased to see the regional planner's advice, and it's probably the last chance we'll have to get that because those people won't be there in December, and it's pretty scary to me, not to say that we aren't capable of eventually incorporating that specialized knowledge, but in the short run, do we really have somebody who's an expert on water management or wastewater and so on and so forth, all these things that we have at the regional plan. But I have selfish reasons for this. I'm a big fan of local food. I've been on a 100-mile diet for a few years. It saved me tons of money. We eat healthy. I really rely on that, If that farmland wasn't there, I'd be very sad. And my other selfish reasons for caring are my grandkids. I just really worry about the world that they're coming to. And so in the end, I accept people need houses. We need more of them. People need jobs. The development industry, the building industry needs to thrive. People need to make money. But how can we be complicit in destroying our planet or making it uninhabitable for our grandchildren? So on that cheerful note, I end my presentation.
Thank you, Kay. That is maybe not the most cheerful note, but I appreciate your coming in tonight and your comments about the official plan, particularly the community outreach and engagement that staff did, because I know they put a lot of time into that. So any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So, Kay, thank you for bringing this back to really the core of what has helped, like the really holistic vision. I mean, I had talked earlier about acknowledging that nature does protect us and that we have to make space for nature. But really, when we think about bold visions for our community, climate resilience has to be one of them. Like, we can't pretend that this is not happening. So thank you for bringing us back to that. And I just want to point out that there's a couple of elements that are maybe missing, policy elements that are upper tier government that are missing right now in our quest to be a climate resilient community. So for instance, our building code. Our building code would unify a lot of the things that we need to have happen here in this province, so that we wouldn't have to do it ad hoc, community by community, and where we could create more certainty for the developers that are in this room today. But we're not going to have something that is net zero ready in Ontario until probably 2030. And our housing deadline is 2031. So this is a really big concern for all of us, I think, on council, is respecting some of these thresholds that we're working in this interim phase where we don't have everything that we need to create this vision that, you know, you're challenging us on, is how we make this inhabitable for our grandchildren. I have the same concern, you know that, so I don't have to convince anyone else of that. But I think it's really important that our official plan does try to create the conditions for us to do this responsibly. So thank you for bringing us back to that.
Yeah, my comment on that, if I may, is just that I hope that high performance development standards that we're working on do something that maybe allow us as a region, I hope as a region, to augment the building code. So.
Right. Thank you, Kay. Are there any other comments or questions for the delegate? No, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Are there any other are there any others present tonight who wish to speak to this application? Seeing none, before I just close this public meeting, there's one question that one thing I wanted to flag that I missed to staff. The question was about lodging houses, and if that's because, excuse me, currently, sorry, I'm just checking my notes here. Existing lodging houses are permitted as legal non-conforming, but our zoning bylaw doesn't permit new lodging houses to be created. And particularly, I'm thinking of a conversation I had a number of months ago with the student co-op. I always forget their acronym, but Waterloo Student Co-op. And they had, their questions were around, they want to build more student cooperative housing, but that our bylaw restricts them from having four units per, 4 bedrooms per unit. Sorry, I'm not being very articulate. So I'm just wondering if that's something that has been contemplated in this, or are we or should I bring this up at a later point? Because I just wanted to make sure that that is covered or caught in this.
Just conferring with Mr. Cotter there, I believe it is a zoning issue, so it isn't so much related to the official plan.
Okay.
And was identified as needing some attention through the affordable housing strategy as well. I'm not thinking of as strong a connection to the official plan review. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, but yeah, we'll just leave that with you then at the appropriate point then. I just wanted to make sure I raise that. Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more delegations, then this formal public meeting is concluded and the application is now open to council for a motion and debate. Go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
Through you, Mayor McCabe. So I did want to make some changes associated with the post-secondary institutions and recognize that I feel as though it's always been collaborative, and it seems like your language is to that effect too. So I'd like to see changes made. Is this the language that was recommended by the delegate? Okay, well, I'm happy to give council an opportunity to look at that language to see whether they're comfortable replacing the language with this language. I don't want to get into wordsmithing per se. So that was the one thing. The second thing is I wanted to make a comment about height. I actually don't have a problem with putting limits on heights. When we look at great cities around the world, like Paris has typically always held its height at 12 stories to create a very pedestrian friendly city. and putting a stake in the ground on where we want our heights to be, I don't have a problem with that. And I don't have a problem with there being a process if we change that. And I think Kay spoke to that really well when she said that our OP allows opportunities for the broader citizenry to comment on applications when they come forth with changes. And that's how we create community. And I don't know whether I'm just paraphrasing your words, so I don't want to misquote you, but the quote from Jane Jacobs talks about building a community for all, and if we just have things like unlimited heights in our plan, then who's building the community? Like, how does the all have a contribution to that community building? And with regard to adding the additional properties, I would really like confirmation that those properties owners want their land deferred. Because I don't know that right now. Like, I appreciate that the planner said he's speaking on behalf of those owners, so like, I'm happy to add them to the list, but I think I would like it with a caveat that staff have the opportunity to confirm with the landowners that they want their lands included, because the city of Waterloo does not want our lands included, and they were on that list. So I think that there needs to be like a second piece to that, in my mind's eye. So those are just some high level comments, and you know, speaking to the delegation on the inclusion of the commercial uses, I think Councillor Vasic spoke to that well earlier when she said that building complete communities and having opportunities for that convertible space just makes sense. It makes sense to me, especially if it's a convertible space. So, yeah, I think that's kind of just some high-level comments that I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Freeman. Other Councillor Bassick.
Thanks through you, Mayor. I'm just going to note that when we talk about Laurier, I'm just going to declare a pecuniary interest and head out. And because I asked that question about the additional properties, if we were to move forward with it, I would also want it with a strong caveat. I don't mind looking at those properties, but given they came in so late and we've already identified a few potential flags, I would also want that caveat as well.
Yeah, okay, I was just gonna ask if you needed a minute, clerks. So we'll just take a minute. But did you have a question, Councillor? Okay. Pardon me? I like the effort at efficiency.
If it's okay, I did want clarity on what exactly we're amending on as it relates to post-secondary, because there was an active piece in the document that said that the city shall participate. And I didn't mind the fact that there was an onus placed on the city to participate in campus master planning, so that, you know, there's a willingness on behalf of our staff to lead in that. So I'm kind of, can anyone help me to understand just which section that this would?
Through the mayor to Councillor Freeman, if we can have just a minute, we have it already, I'm just typing it up. Then we'll have it on screen, and then that way if council wants to make any amendments to it, it'll be easier. We just need a minute. I'm not sure if we need to recess or if we can just wait a minute.
Okay, go ahead, Clerk.
Through to council, work is just going to pull up the blurb that council would normally read to approve it. And we've highlighted the amendments as proposed in the letter from MHBC. And then additionally, is it showing up yet? Additionally, we've put in a section if council wanted to add properties. We haven't listed them separately. And we would add in that language subject to property owner confirmation. I'll email it to you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, for doing this on the fly.
So I did find the section that I wanted to keep in, which was 10.5 or something, that says the city will work with post-secondary educational institutions to plan for campus growth needs. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not striking that.
The clerk is saying no, not striking that part.
Yeah, so it's 10.4.1 bracket 5 we keep.
Okay, I think we have the wording up here now. Thanks very much, Rook and Julie. Pardon me. Excuse me.
How do we do this to facilitate Councillor Vasek recusing herself on the post-secondary institution piece? Like, can we do this so that we move everything except that one item?
Well, I was going to confer with the clerk, but I was going to suggest we put the Laurie or the university stuff at the end if you feel that you need to recuse yourself. Yeah, because can I just clarify, like the post-secondary stuff would be, like we've got 3 post-secondary campuses in our community. Like, would it apply to all of them and not just Laurier? So that's why I was wondering if, like, first I want to just confirm that it's to more than one. But if it is to all of them, then does that really mean you need to declare, or are you just being cautious?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, because it's come directly as advocacy from Laurier, I think I'm most comfortable just stepping out.
That's fine. So we'll turn to the clerk.
I would recommend that you still deal with it in section 2, but if you call for a recorded vote, you can vote on the section separately, and then Councillor Vasek can leave, for 2A and B. It really would be difficult to adopt the plan and then later in the recommendation to amend the plan, I think. But if it's at the end, I don't think that it really makes that big of a difference. It's whatever your comfort level is as well, Councillor Vasek.
My comfort level is low because the advocacy has come from Laurier directly. And I have reached out in previous instances to the Integrity Commissioner. Is that who I reached out to? Yeah. And they expressed more caution than even I was expecting them to. Not about this item specifically, obviously. So I don't want to make things difficult. I'm also not comfortable voting for it.
Okay. Okay, yeah, you can step out for that part then. That's fair enough, and sign the disclosure form later. Councillor Freeman.
Well, I had a suggestion. Couldn't we say that we approve the report and then we approve these amendments to the policy, and then later couldn't Councillor Vasek come in and, if she chooses, vote on the whole document with the amendment that we had already made changes to as a council?
Well, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Because she's stepping out. She'll step out for that part.
Yeah, I just didn't know if she wanted to have the opportunity to vote on this big document.
So I'll just turn to the clerk one more time to explain how to do this most efficiently.
I would just view, I think that what you will be doing is calling a recorded vote and separating out section 2 from 2A and 2B. And so Councillor Bassett can leave for the recorded vote on 2A and 2B. It is all part and part. At the end of the day, it's a whole plan. So it really doesn't make that much of a difference how you do it.
Okay, thank you. And we have the other wording about the other addresses and that in there as well? Okay. All right, so we have that. We have a process. Are there any other comments on this? No, seeing none. Okay, a mover? Moved by Councillor Bodley. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Bodley for reading what's on the screen.
I've never read it off the screen before. I usually have a nice fancy piece of paper in front. It's fine. Whereas council has considered all written and oral submissions, and whereas council has considered the professional opinions of planning staff, therefore be it resolved. 1, that council approve report IPPW 2024-061. 2, that council adopt official plan amendment number 58, OPA 58, official plan review phase 1, as set out in appendix A to IPPW 2024-061, and recommendation 5 herein with the following amendment: A, that council approve amendments to policy 10.4.16 to read: post-secondary educational institutions are encouraged to create campus master plans, and B, that council approve amendments to policy 10.4.114 to read: the city strongly encourages housing on post-secondary educational institution campuses for the use by students, staff, and faculty of such institutions. 3, that council requests that the regional municipality of Waterloo approve official plan amendment number 58, OPA 58. 4, that council direct staff to initiate a zoning bylaw amendment application to implement official plan amendment number 58. 5, that for the properties listed in the staff report and the following additional properties: 175 Park Street, 35 John Street West, 173 to 189 Park Street, the Hoother, 59 King Street North, 71 King Street North, 44 Dorset Street, 9 Bridgeport Road, 11 Bridgeport Road, 103 Herb Street West, 318 Herb Street West, 70 Short Street, Park Street Consolidation, 87 Park Street, 40 William Street West, and shown on screen, council defer its decision on OPA 58 and direct staff to further review applicable official plan policies and schedules that pertain to such properties with the respective landowners.
Well done, Councillor. Okay, so we will vote on, okay, just hold on a second. Did you have some further instructions first? No? Okay. Okay. So we've got that moved and seconded by Councillor Freeman. So we will vote on them with the exception of, I forget, is it 2A and 2B? I just don't have them on my screen anymore.
Yeah, I would just recommend that if thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
If you call a recorded vote and vote on them one at a time, so
Okay.
vote on 1. You can use the same mover and seconder, and then 2, and then 2A, and then 2B.
Okay, so we will call a recorded vote. Ready to go, Brooke? Okay. All in favor of recommendation 1? That is unanimous. All in favor of recommendation 2A and B? Oh, sorry, 2, sorry, 2. You can leave quickly. Okay, that is carried. 2A, 2B, that is, both are carried. Okay, now you can come back, Councillor Bassick. Recommendation 3, could you maybe scroll the screen? Thanks, Rook. That is carried unanimously. Recommendation 4, that is carried. Recommendation 5 with the additional properties, that is carried. And the additional, I'm not sure which number we're at now, but all the additional properties that were listed in the agenda as presented. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, thank you, council. Thank you, staff, for your work on this. I know there's more work to do, but we appreciate the some of the comments from the residents and the developers who were here about the engagement that occurred and and the time you took to listen to residents and developers. So thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward for the next update. Okay, so moving on, we have consideration of notice of motion given at a previous meeting. There are none. There are no notices of motion. No communications and correspondence. Unfinished business, there is none. Questions, any questions, council? Seeing none. Any new business? Well, there is new business here. Regional all-council meeting. There's a recommendation there. If someone moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Any other new business that anyone wants to add? Seeing none. Enactment of the bylaws, moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Vasek. And just before I say adjournment, all in favor? Okay, and just before I say adjournment, there was a lot of really good work done here today, so thank you to everyone. Okay, mover for adjournment, moved by Councillor Vasek, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.